I'm live at the Red House with my good friend Alan V. Nelson.
Howdy.
Who I know as a Christian apologist, one of my debate buddies, and also the host of a kind of like revivified podcast.
For like the third or fourth time.
Yeah. Internet sensation.
Yeah, we'll go with that. No, not even in the slightest, but yeah.
Black Sheep Apologetics.
Yeah, Black Sheep Apologetics.
Why don't we just start there? Why don't we start with what you're doing? Like that's your big like creative undertaking right now. So maybe you could start with talking about where that came from and what you're trying to do.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, thank you for having me, first of all. Every time I come up here, I get a little bit jealous, but then the longer I spend up here, I feel like I need to be around at least one more person.
Right.
But I'm always happy to be in your company. So, my name's Alan V. Nelson, Black Sheep Apologetics Podcast, part-time ministry, all those different things. But yeah, the podcast is rebooted. The first episode features my dad, who's a pastor, theologian, missionary kind of guy. And he's also been, I would say probably the biggest reason why Black Sheep Apologetics exists in the first place. So it kind of goes back, why Black Sheep Apologetics even exists kind of goes back to him and my relationship growing up, because I was an only boy with 3 sisters. And being an only boy with 3 sisters, you don't so much get to share time as you just get to find time. And so, and my 3 sisters love them to death, but there's 3 of them. There's 1 of me. You can't raise boys and girls the exact same way. And when there's 3 of them taking up 3 times as much time, you got to kind of evaluate. So when I got time, with my parents, just like one-on-one and everything like that, I had all these curiosities built up. Like I was all boy, like I was always adventures and accidentally starting fires in the woods, but it was just like, I had all this curiosity built up. And being a preacher kid, missionary kid kind of situation going on, there's a lot of curiosity spiritually. And because we were traveling around the world, there was like a lot of cultural curiosity. And there was a lot of things that are just like they warned us about and tried to keep us away from, but they were learning the cultures with us, a lot of the time. So we were all learning what we could, migrate towards a lot of times. So a lot of times we were all, learning together. But again, I was the boy. I was kind of the outcast in the family by no fault of anybody's except for just,
circumstance.
God gave my parents 3 girls, and they gave them 1 of me, which they're very thankful for. So I had all these curiosities, and even in my own family, just kind of not outcast, but not forgotten necessarily. But when you spent time with Alan, you really had to dive into time with Alan. You had to make sure there was room to breathe, for the conversation to breathe, because I was everywhere. To the point where like my mom tried to homeschool me, I think in like kindergarten or maybe preschool or something like that. And she could homeschool my sisters really well. And she just gave up on me. Thankfully, not in everything, but definitely being my teacher. So the trajectory, you can see where this is going, to where it's just like, okay, so Alan was basically a black sheep in his upbringing, in his curiosity. And so that just kind of cycled through to the people that I was like interested in or ended up hanging out with or having conversations with. Because I know me and you have had conversations about being black sheep, and you don't necessarily identify as that, but you are. And it's just kind of one of those things. But as I grow up, those are just people that I tend to just be attracted to, and they're attracted to me, and we just tend to find each other. Well, when I was in high school, like late high school, might have been right after high school, my dad gave me a book, and I've told this story before. I actually just told it on my podcast. He gave me this book called The Lotus and the Cross, Jesus Talks with Buddha by Ravi Zacharias. He didn't know anything about apologetics at the time. He had just found this book, read it. It's a day read, nothing crazy. And he's like, well, where Alan's at and what he thinks about, and he spends a lot of time with. I think that he could get a lot out of this book. And that's when I found apologetics. That's when I really started to figure out why I believed what I believed as a Christian. And so from 16, 17, maybe 18 years old, then on, you know, I found a place to really like put my curiosity. Well, from there, I had to mature as a person for a very long time. Still kind of, I didn't even know how to articulate the black sheep of it all, really, until just a few years ago, because I was, you know, coming out of my own stuff, out of my own story, which is a separate episode by itself. But I was still kind of having these questions, these curiosities. And as I came out of a lot of, you know, my story, it dawned on me that who I am and who I spend a lot of time with and the conversations that I have, they need to have a direction. And maybe there needs to be a voice for that side of the conversation. Whether that's in the church, in the culture, just in your regular communities. There's going to be black sheep everywhere. They're curious, they're forgotten, they're outcast. There's all these different things. And when they have big questions that are not like the big questions necessarily, like does God exist, but they have big questions, like, for example, what's it going? Oh yeah, one I always come back to was the Leviathan from Job 41, which is a book in the Bible and a chapter in the Bible, Job 41. Was the Leviathan real? And if so, is he still alive? You know, and that was a huge one for me. Very few people like talking about that question, especially in Christian circles, because then you're talking about sea monsters, and Christians are like, well, one, we're about Jesus, not sea monsters, and two, why are you asking that question? Are you spending too much time playing video games? Are you spending too much time reading fantasy? You know, it's like, no. There's a big giant monster in Job 41 that the Bible's talking about. What is this thing, you know? Right. And so, yeah, I just felt the need that I believe that God placed it on my heart to create this thing, this ministry, with all these little pieces, the podcast being one of them, to kind of speak not necessarily, into those people's lives, but also for those people, and have conversations with people that are willing to have those conversations. Because a lot of people don't have the ability to get with people, or they don't have the resources, or they don't know who. But I know a lot of people that will have those conversations. So why not have them, you know, on my show, have the conversations and run with it. So another thing that everybody needs to learn about me from the very beginning is that I take a very simple question and make it 3,000 miles long of an answer. So, but yeah, I mean, there's just a lot. But yeah, Black Sheep Apologetics just comes from turning 37 this year, 37 years of just figuring myself out, where I'm supposed to be, who I want to be surrounded by, and who I want to help. So, yeah.
Yeah, man. Apologetics is really what ended up causing you and I to meet each other.
Really, and Instagram.
Yeah.
Shout out to IG.
Yes, they as a company will really appreciate the endorsement.
Aren't they part of Meta now?
Yeah, they are.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
It sure is.
It's really creepy. Are we real?
I don't know. But
how do you know?
But the apologetics thing, yeah. So that that drew us together because of Instagram, because I stumbled across your page and got really curious because you're the only person I've met that used that term to describe yourself and what you do with your faith, and that was really fascinating to me. Which obviously, as we both know, led us to a couple years of being friends now, of just getting together and sometimes arguing pretty loud, and sometimes not talking about Christianity at all, and just talking about life and stuff. And it's been a fruitful thing so far.
It has.
Hopefully we'll bring it all down today.
Yeah, it's we're going to burn it to the ground. Somehow the non-believer and the believer are just going to finally come to blows. Yep. And, you know, heaven or hell is either going to exist or it's going to not. You know, It's based on this conversation.
And it's going to this episode is going to be used in court under evidence.
Well, I'm really hoping I don't say
punch.
anything that gets you censored. That's what I'm really, because people have listened to our conversations. Like I've told you, people have come up to me and be like, hey, and they overheard things I said, and that led them to want to talk to me, not in a bad way, but again, these curious people.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, oh man, glad they didn't take offense to that.
Yeah.
Because I remember the context of the conversation, but yeah.
Luckily, I'm not nearly big enough. This podcast isn't big enough to even, Well, somebody probably could get mad and try to take it down or whatever.
Do you want to test it?
No.
Test it?
I mean, if we do, that's fine, but it's not a goal. So, like apologetics, man. Like, I listened to your podcast with your dad, and I heard you. I'm not challenging your definition by any stretch of the imagination, but I heard you kind of give an explanation of it. That's like. I don't know how you would say it exactly, whether it's a justification for certain beliefs or explaining what you believe. And I heard that and I was like, yeah, obviously that's one way to say it. But then there's also, it's like a weird tradition, right? Like, what is the more dense, less understandable definition of apologetics?
In its simplest form, it's just depending on who you are and who you're talking to. Because the answers don't necessarily change. But the presentation of them does. So say you are a professional philosopher who happens to be a believer who debates. William Lane Craig is, not for me, but he's just one of the more popular ones. He's at the top of the list as far as popular ones. And he'll do those things. But then there's people like Alvin Plantinga, who is not so public, but has opus, or whatever the plural of opus is, of his Christian faith, and just exploring the deep reasons, the warranted Christian belief that he believes that he has and everything like that. Just expounding on those. People like Gary Habermas has I think he said almost 5,000 pages of evidence for the resurrection. So the presentation is what gets intricate, what gets deep. Not necessarily the idea behind apologetics. Because all it is just a legal term from ancient Greece, which is apologia, or apologia, however you want to pronounce it. And everybody understood that term back then because it was what lawyers or people representing themselves, anybody that was giving a defense, used in court. And so, I mentioned this on my podcast, where it's my lawyer friend, he practiced business apologetics. His business defense, defense for business practices, reasons for doing what you're doing. Now, there is law intertwined with that, so there's a right or wrong, thing as far as the ethics and morality and everything like that. Whereas Christian apologetics mainly debates ethics and morality and their existence and what that existence points to. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily that apologetics has a, like I said, deeper rooted thing. It's just basically the presentation and where you find yourself and who you're talking to that can really go, it can really go to some fun places.
Yeah.
Fun places. So
I for one, I like the angle that you've taken with the whole black sheep thing and with appealing. It sounded like you really have, when you were talking to your dad, it sounded like you really have, I guess you'd say a heart for people who find themselves struggling with those tough questions and stuff, and that you care about connecting with those people rather than ostracizing them. Is that just from your own experience? Is that what gave you that desire to empathize with those people?
Yes and no. Yes, because I've been that person that was kind of ostracized to a much lesser extent than the people that I believe that this is for. So I lead a men's group on Thursday night, men's Bible study on Thursday night, and it is populated, depending on how many people show up, between 6 to 8 guys every Thursday night who are exactly these people. And they have these huge questions, no community around these questions, but they're all involved in some aspect of church or Christian belief or all these different things. And then the group text that we actually have has like a few other people that just don't show up, which is perfectly fine. Shout out to the people that don't show up, that should. But these guys, they're all in different levels and have different questions, and they show up and it's like, oh, we're allowed to talk about that here? We're allowed to ask those questions? But then some nights it's like, I have this question, it's like, well, we're talking about this. Oh, I thought this was a place where we could have. Okay, all right. But it's not about you, you know? It's not about you. It's about all of us. It's about us having a home. And so it's like, that's a good representation of kind of what I'm trying to do with this. Not so much just for men. Men are ostracized right now in culture as it is. Getting really close to that line. But men are ostracized in culture as it is. But just curious people with really.
Sorry, you made me laugh.
I'm sorry, it's gonna happen.
It made me laugh because it's so common for people to in conversations I've had on this show already. It's not uncomfortable for anybody if people talk about the belief that supports the idea that that you know what I'm saying. It's not uncomfortable at all if we talk about things from a liberal angle that happens to align also with like maybe feminism or whatever, that like deals with situations where women are treated unfairly.
Right.
But it's like we both are aware of the fact that if like the fact that you said that, somebody wishes that they could come through the camera right now and correct you. You know. And
do you want to give
that,
them the address?
No, definitely
okay.
not.
All
but anywho.
Yeah,
sorry, you made me laugh.
No, that's good. It means we're still friends. But yeah, so one, they have a home as men's where they can come and discuss anything they want and not feel weird or like, okay, whatever. But then the bigger questions, the deeper questions, like, hey, I feel like God used to talk to me this way a few years ago, but now that I've tried to clean up my act, I was like a mess back then, and he talked to me this way. Why doesn't he talk to me like that anymore? I need to hear from him like that now. It was so clear back then. Why not now? And they get angry about this because they're just like, where's God? Where's God? Where's God? I mean, I know he's there, but why can't I hear him? And it's like, did you hear him to begin with? Was that really him talking when you were a mess? You know? And so a lot of these questions glean more questions that create really powerful conversations. Yeah. And so, so what I want to do is just kind of take that spirit, that heart in those conversations and just transplant it to one-on-one conversations like this, and just really give like one question at a time that, has little branches, but give one big question at a time room to breathe. And so that way, if these people are listening to this and they're going, oh, okay, wait, oh, these people are actually talking about, okay, and I didn't realize a bit like my cousin Seth, I didn't realize that he had some of the same questions that I did. And since that episode's come out, we've reconnected and we've been like sharing like data on like this one specific topic, and it's really cool. And we're also like, he was coming to the same conclusions that I was, but we didn't have anybody to talk to about that. And he didn't know of anybody that he could like really, really dive into it with. And so now, based on that question that he's really excited about, I'm planning an episode just on that question. Yeah. And I don't know who I'm going to talk to about it, because I want to talk to somebody that like is a little bit more of an authority on it than I am and than he is, to where they'll actually entertain it, but it's still, I have a huge heart for these people, because I don't like when one of the basic human things that we do is ask questions. And I don't like it when people say, you can't ask that, you can't discuss that. And it's like, who said? Because if you're a Christian, because it's not just a podcast for Christians, it's just a podcast for people that have questions that maybe are, around Christianity. It's just one of those things. But if God will entertain the question in the Bible, then why won't we, as people of, believers in God, so why won't we have those questions outside of the Bible? He's from my perspective, he's the only one with those answers, of course, like ultimately. but we can still have the conversation.
So give me an example of some of the questions that you enjoy dealing with that are in this realm.
Okay. So we got the Leviathan question, which is a huge question. Then we got, churches. Some churches act like businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Should churches act like businesses? And it's just like, should they?
Right.
Somebody close to me is a PhD in nonprofits with an emphasis on like church organization and everything like that. I'm going to have him on. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Church and business and where they intersect and where they should stay apart. And, me and him already found like a moment of disagreement, not anything tense, but just a moment of disagreement. And it might just be miscommunication or misunderstanding, but there's the conversation. Let's see here. Another one, hearing God, did like some spiritual gifts, like a lot of people have heard about speaking in tongues or prophecy or all these different things. Did those end or did they continue after a certain point in time, stuff like that? Because a lot of people believe that they ended and a lot of people believe that they never ended. But if you go and talk to somebody, you always get like a straight answer, like, this is it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, well, let's have the conversation. Don't just give me, this is it, you should believe that, that's what the Bible says, or that's not what the Bible says. Let's talk about that. Let's explore it. Because some of these questions I don't know the answer to, but I'm just as curious as the listener. I have some answers that I found, but I'm just as curious as the listener on some, questions. So let's find somebody to talk to about it. Let's see here. Were dinosaurs on the ark?
Right. So like moral and ethical things,
ethical things,
theological things, and also like just fun things.
Just fun things, man.
Yeah.
All of it's fun.
The one I remember, or one that I remember in high school, an experience, because I went to a Christian school,
right,
and I was probably discouraged from some of the conversations that I wanted to have. In fact, I definitely was. I mean, that's what I ended up starting a little Bible study with a group of folks that was kind of for this. It was motivated by a similar drive. Like, I just wanted to have the stranger conversations about stuff and look for answers, and that didn't really work out. And so that part of me really identifies with what you're doing. But anywho,
that's why we get along.
I do think that's why we get along pretty well. That's one of the reasons. Also just appreciation, I think, for argument.
And I'm just super jealous of the beard all the time, and the more I can be around it,
yeah,
it's just living vicariously through your face.
Yeah, you and me both. But the one that I remember from high school, I remember being in a class and being like, somehow aliens were brought up, and I had a teacher that was like, there can't be aliens because the Bible says that Jesus came to earth and saved us, and if there were aliens, Jesus is the only Son of God, and if there were aliens, then he would have had to go to their planet and like die for them. Otherwise, they'd be perfect. So there can't be aliens in space. And I was like, I don't think that checks out.
I love that question too.
What do you think about it?
What do I think about aliens?
Does it affect Christianity?
No. Two things. We can talk about that question or not if you want to. But it's your show. So
I think I want to get into just a bunch of this stuff.
Okay. All right. Cool. So we'll start with that one then. First answer, and these. Well, let me offer a resource on this topic before I go any further.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a fictional resource. Like it exists, but it's like fiction. And it's Paralandra by C.S. Lewis.
Okay.
It's the second in his space trilogy. And it's about the main character, Dr. Ransom, going to a different planet and basically meeting the beginning of sentient life. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kind of, in a very literary way, talks about this question.
Okay.
Not on purpose about, like, are there aliens? But it really explores, like, what would the Jesus question kind of look like, or the God question kind of look like, or, the beginning of man and creation and the fall, what would that kind of look like somewhere else? And so, and one, it's the best of the trilogy. Like, I mean, a lot of people love the third one, a lot of people love the first one, but if you're objective, it's the second one. Like, it's always the second one. It's the best. But Paralandra by C.S. Lewis, beautiful book, not very long at all, but it's so, so good. And it really, I think, speaks into this question a little bit. So that's a resource. It's a fun little resource, and it's a good trilogy, but I think that the second one's the best. I have no problem believing that aliens exist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, one, if they do, they need to land here, and you need to have them on your show because you have the yard out here.
So it used to have corn in it too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, see, you're missing an opportunity out here.
I know.
You know, but I think that they need to land here. You need to have them on your show. But the question of like Jesus coming here and all these different things, okay, fine. There's room for that, and I don't discourage that because you can run with that and everything like that. But the question of, I don't want to say necessity, because when you get too much into the Jesus question, like as far as like his atonement, like him coming and dying on the cross, you have to be very, very specific with your words. And because we're having fun, and because I'm not talking to somebody that like can correct me in real time, you know, like as if I'm not getting too off like biblical base, we'll acknowledge that, but not like move too close to it, because I don't want to say anything off, because I'm having fun. I'm just having fun. But I think that if aliens exist, I have no problem with that idea at all. But I don't think that it changes the character of God whatsoever. So I have no problem with them existing, because I don't think that their existence changes anything about the story of Jesus at all. Period. Yeah. God, if they exist, that doesn't change the fact that, and I say the fact because that's where I'm at. It's not necessarily you at or half the people listening, but it doesn't change the fact that he's the timeless, spaceless, immaterial creator of the universe that exists, you know, and then created everything. So that doesn't change him, and it doesn't change the fact that he loves the people he sent his son for. It just means there's other sentient beings.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's why I reference Paralandra by C.S. Lewis, because it kind of goes into like the sentient being question and like what that would look like on a different planet. But yeah, the character of God, I don't think would change. But if we're going to discuss it in a way that the character of God does change, then we have to consider a lot of variables. So it's just like, well, aliens show up, so God must not exist. Okay. Well, that's a really big leap from aliens existing to God's in existence. So you're going to have to bridge that gap.
I'd have to agree with that.
Pretty well.
Yeah, I mean that's a weird conclusion.
Yeah.
But I guess I remember in high school I thought to myself, and of course I believed the interpretation of Genesis that, you know, that stood on the assumption that Adam and Eve was like a literal story that is historical. And I thought, how come that story can't have taken place on a different planet, but they didn't eat the fruit? It doesn't mean that they were any less created, you know? Of course, maybe then they weren't cursed with the burden of like populating the world or whatever. I don't know how you would deal with all that, but that whole thing doesn't make them any less created by God if they didn't screw it up, you know? So
right.
I guess I just didn't see why it was necessary to think that if people don't have a history of sinning, that that messes with the philosophy of Christianity, and like that if you don't sin, that you're equal to God or something, so you must sin kind of thing.
Well, the implication is that if aliens exist, then some part of something else must have created them. And
is like, that what people think?
That's the implication. That's like what people think that people are thinking. They're like, well, if aliens exist, then you're kind of saying that there must have been some other creator, and Jesus, like you said, only came here to us and everything like that. Well, one, there's no evidence that Jesus only came here to us, period, at all. Like, because we don't know what's out there. We don't know where else Jesus or the Son of God went. Now, again, this is conjecture. I'm not preaching heresy or anything like this. Again, this is somebody's not like correcting me. I've read the Bible through twice. I don't think that there's any reason for me to think that I'm saying anything necessarily biblically wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus, yes, came to earth to die for us. But that's not to say that there was not a reason for him to go somewhere else for other sentient beings to do the same thing. And that's just part of the fun conversation, but I'm not going to stand up in anybody's pulpit and say that. But I don't think that I think that there's a lot of things that we don't know about what he created, because like there was Mars picture that just showed up recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like this really, it almost looks like a really intentional shape that was found in the dirt, and it's either a rock or some dirt that was just this really intentional shape. Almost it was like hewn and finished, to just a beautiful smooth edge, sides, everything. I don't know what's on Mars. I don't know. I don't think Jesus went there.
Yeah.
All these different things. But that doesn't mean that there's not sentient life there. That doesn't mean that, all these different things. But aliens existing, and I think that conflating the argument between aliens' existence and Jesus coming to die for us, those two things can't coexist.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's, those things not being able to coexist, I think, would have more judgment on God's character than both of them existing.
I'll tell you a non-offensive Jesus joke that I heard.
Non-offensive? Is Jesus the butt of a joke?
I don't think.
Because if he's the butt of the joke, then it's offensive.
I don't think he is.
If he just happens to be in the joke, it's not offensive.
It's like about. You can tell me. You can
Okay.
tell me if it's offensive or not.
All right, it's your show.
Yeah.
I'll still probably laugh, unfortunately.
I don't think it is offensive as I think about it, but I heard it. It's part of a stand-up bit that I heard, and I can't do it justice, but the situation was like somebody was talking to an alien, and they were trying to figure out this whole Jesus thing, and the guy was like, or the alien was like, "Oh, you guys got visited by Jesus too? Yeah, we did too. It was crazy. Yeah, he was kind of picky. He didn't like our chocolate." And the guy was like, "What do you mean he didn't like your chocolate?" And the alien's like, "Well, yeah, I mean, he said he was like the son of God. So we like threw a huge party and had a big dinner and like treated him, like a star and gave him all our best chocolate and all our best food. He didn't like the chocolate much." The guy had a kind of a puzzled look, and the alien was like, "Why? What did y'all do when he visited y'all?" I think it's quite funny.
It's funny because we're stupid. That's why it's funny. That's why aliens are considered the more intelligent races. I think that has along the lines of like there's a joke that we heard while my dad was a missionary in Scandinavia, and Norwegians and Swedes, they don't hate each other, but there's this rivalry because their cultures are very similar, their languages are very similar, and I don't remember whether it was Norway or Sweden, but somebody in one of those countries told us a joke, and it's a question. Why wasn't Jesus born? Let's say we heard it in Sweden. Why wasn't Jesus born in Norway?
I couldn't tell you.
They couldn't find any wise men.
Mm.
And so it's just a little dig.
Yeah.
But Jesus isn't the point of the joke. And the joke that you're telling, the butt of the joke is us.
It's humanity, yeah.
And that's actually kind of funny as it relates to actually Christianity and Jesus, is that that's the point. That's what we did.
Yeah.
He came to save us, and we're just like, kill him. He came to do the best thing that we possibly could think of ever, period. And we're like, yeah, we don't like this guy. He's going to give his life for us. And that feels kind of arrogant. So we're going to kill him. And then God's like, yeah, you are. And Jesus died, was buried. And then 3 days later, he's like, what now? Like, not so much. I mean, he had more to say.
Yeah.
Than that, but it's like, okay, kill me, fine.
So you approve of this joke?
I do. I think it's a great joke.
Okay.
I think it's a really good joke. I think that any pastor would do well to use that from the pulpit. I might have to use it too, because it's a thinker.
As you were talking and going through things, I found like 5 things that I was like, I need to ask that, I need to mention that, I need to lead us to that. But the one that might derail us the most is this one. As you were talking, you're sort of like, you're saying like, I don't want to say anything theologically incorrect or whatever. And the glaring issue with that, I think, is like, there are so many different parts of Christianity that disagree on what theologically correct even means.
Some people in the next few minutes.
That's fine.
On my side.
I'm not trying to. I'm definitely.
No, I'm just going to have to. It
yeah.
just happens.
Well, I just wanted to make it clear. Like, I mean, you know that you and I have had a history of you knew me as like a way more outspoken atheistic person that was like I was anti-theistic, so I considered people who had faith like kind of. I was like a combatant of theirs, which I don't really think of myself as that now, but
You want to tell people what your intent was with talking to me at the very beginning?
I don't know what my intent was.
Well, you said that you would go out of your way to either make me angry or make me cry, and you could never achieve either.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds like something I would say.
Which always makes me laugh, because I never knew. I was just sitting there. I was like, this is just fun. And you're the whole time, apparently, you're trying to make me angry and make me cry.
Yeah, I would provoke something. Yeah, I think I found the whole provocateur personality kind of exciting at that point in my life.
Only Milo's really good at it.
Yeah.
He
probably still is, but
That's not an endorsement of Milo Yiannopoulos.
No, not at all. But I mean, last time I saw him on a podcast, he didn't have the same vinegar at all. He just...
That's because he's claiming to have his heart right with God, so I think that kind of takes the wind out of some of your sails.
Yeah.
Not yours.
It'll do that to a person.
It will, eventually.
So, let's get back to theology. I don't know. I mean, is that... I think there's you can interpret it however you want, but what I noticed about it is that even just the very idea of being confined to, I want my speech to be consistent with like what's theologically correct, that can be a bit limiting, I would think, in the pursuit of, because you have all this like deep curiosity, and it seems like that piece of how you operate, or not you, but how anybody could operate, that would interfere with curiosity, I would think, in some ways, because it's kind of a block. Like you can't think past a certain thing, which is like you can't betray what you think is theologically correct. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's I think that's a good question. Not to nitpick your statement, but I just want to clarify where I'm coming from when I try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not wrong in saying it's theological, but what I'm trying to do is be biblical.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of times when you bring up all these different sects and denominations and isms within Christianity, a lot of times people are trying to be theologically correct, meaning they want to be as correct as they possibly can to the theology that they've adopted as part of their faith.
Yeah.
So there's all these different theologies. There's Molinism, there's Calvinism, there's Arminianism, there's Billicism, there's Jesusism, there's progressivism. There's all these different isms within Christianity, along with all the denominations, which we have the Baptist denomination, Episcopalian, Methodist, Presbyterian, all these different things, full gospel, independent Baptist, even little sub denominations.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that I'm not necessarily being theologically correct as I'm trying to be biblically correct.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to say any more than what the Bible has said, because then we get into Mormonism, like as an example, as a model. And I don't want to say anything incorrect as to what the Bible has said. And there's foundations and root for that, based on, the Christian faith, the Christian belief system. But, and so, yes, it's limiting, but I just want to make sure that not to correct you or belittle you or anything like that, but just make sure we're using the right terminology as it relates to me.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that I'm biblically correct. You want to say limited? Okay, I can limit myself. I can agree with that. I will limit myself by the boundaries that the Bible and I believe God has already said. This is what's true. This is what's not. Don't add to, take away. Otherwise, have fun being curious.
Mm-hmm.
So does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. So therein, I just put limitations on our conversation. Do you find that our conversation is now less or more fruitful or potential to grow and expand?
I think specificity and targets, are they can be helpful in everything, So in our conversation, if it's all over the place, that's not as great of a conversation, in my opinion, as one could be if it's like really pointed towards something. So
Right.
I think that's an argument for what you're saying. I mean, I will acknowledge that. I mean, in knowing you, I'm not going to like talk with you like I do with some people and be all foul mouthed and profane.
You should come to group on Thursday nights.
Yeah?
It's okay.
Yeah? Y'all let loose a little?
It's a very, very real, very raw atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I wish that I could, and I hope that in sometimes the conversations that happen on Black Sheep Apologetics, I hope they go there. You're not going to hear language or foul talk from me.
Yeah.
Necessarily. Like I'll go too far with like poop jokes, or say crap. Oh no. But and if we talk about the sexual aspect of things, there are things you're going to have to say. But with the guys on Thursday night, like it's very real. It's very raw. We're there. We're present. We gotta say what needs to be said. We gotta talk about things that need to be talked about, especially as far as men go.
Yeah.
So you be who you need to be, or who you feel like needs to you let your own lion roar. I'm gonna roll with whatever you got. Like,
yeah.
I'm not worried about it.
Well, there's this part of me that like I hate to even acknowledge out loud that I might filter myself depending on who I'm talking to, but I don't know. There is a thing in my head that's like I'm not only just having a conversation with you, but in a way I'm like interviewing you. I'm trying to like make this about you and learn about you from a different angle than what I already have in our life. And there's this idea in my head that if I'm talking to somebody who might be a Christian or something, by just cursing throughout the conversation like I normally would, right, I might just be making them less comfortable than they otherwise would be, less open than they otherwise would be, and that might actually be, kind of not an asset to the conversation that we could have.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
Anybody that's worried about the F word, okay. If you want to have a real human conversation, and in your mind shut down because you hear 4 letters in a certain order,
yeah,
and go, I can't do this unless they clean up their mouth. It's like, why are you even talking with people?
Yeah.
Like, cause, okay, yeah, there's a case that could be made for like people that, for not using those words. There's a case that could be made. I don't use those words. It's a personal choice. I have a lot of reasons for it. But I think that it's important to let people be people, flawed, broken, and beautiful at the same time. Because if we're not flawed and broken and beautiful, then from the Christian perspective, why did Jesus come?
Yeah.
It's like if we're put together, if we have to clean up our act depending on who we are or who we're around, we should strive to be better every single day. And for Christians, like, we're some of the biggest hypocrites you've ever met. But if we are going to, God has set a certain standard for his followers to be like, hey, do your best to be this. I've sent a helper to help you with this. Maybe Christians don't need to use that language, but you got to be real. You got to be angry sometimes. You got to do all these things, and you got to grow through things. But I'm not going to hold you to the same standard that I believe that God holds me to as a believer versus a non-believer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it do.
So if you feel like you need to say it, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to encourage you to do it.
Right.
But I'm also going to be like, dude, just be yourself.
I mean,
man.
of course, if it came to it, I'd say whatever. But I guess I'm just.
I'm also
aware
not
of it.
going to let you just interview me. You know, this is going to be a conversation
Yeah.
because I love you too much.
Well, let's continue down this road. By the way, I love you too. Let's continue down this road of me throwing these options out to you. So
Did you want to stay on the tribalism thing?
Wait. Tribalism? Where were we?
We were talking about like all the different as far as like.
Oh right, we didn't. You haven't answered that yet.
Yeah.
Go with it. The next one. Never mind. I wait till we go with the tribalism thing, and then
because we can go Joe Rogan time if you want to. I mean, we can just go.
I bet with you. I bet we'll hit 2 hours. So we'll see.
I'm okay. We can go. Well, last time we went, the first time we went over 2 hours was the 4 or 5 hour conversation where we ended up yelling at each other in the alley.
Yeah.
Because we were so tired and hungry.
Yeah.
We didn't realize how hungry we were.
Yeah.
We
one
weren't even
time,
angry.
we went a long time down there.
It wasn't even angry. It was just, we were just so tired. And
yeah.
hungry. Yeah. So I find that I don't think that for curiosity's sake, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're curious and you're asking me questions that you think will be beneficial to the conversation, maybe beneficial to people listening, maybe beneficial to Red House sessions in general, all these different things. And we're also between four walls.
Mm-hmm.
But we have all this curiosity, we have all this creativity, and yet this conversation is blossoming in a bunch of different ways. But, so I don't think that making sure that I'm being as biblically sound as possible is limiting necessarily to my growth as a Christian, to my growth as a person, to my growth as my growth in curiosity and creativity. I think that it, as is evident here, this is all over the place in certain things. And like you said, a conversation without boundaries isn't a very interesting conversation. It's just words thrown against the wall and
chaos.
Yeah, it's chaos. Yeah. And which is what the feminine, the control is the masculine, the chaos is the feminine for good reason.
Order.
Yeah. So 12 rules for life, gentlemen. But it's not an endorsement of Jordan Peterson. But we're just so close to offending so many people. I think that anybody that limits themselves theologically as a separate pursuit, I think that is where we get into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. As far as I think any belief system goes.
Yeah, I mean, I think you listed off a lot of different theologies, and I think people often, people of faith, it for some reason comes more down to denominations for a lot of people. Maybe it's just like the next layer of depth when you get into theology and stuff, but that's not stuff that I ever heard talked about nearly as much. Like maybe you could talk about you don't have to talk about what your theology is, but all those different theologies, Calvinism to, you said something like Jesusism?
Jesusism, yeah.
All these theologies, like, how do you define a theology different from a denomination?
So a denomination can have an amalgam of theologies, or it can be one theology. So a denomination is, I'd say it's churches that lean more toward a specific group of theologies and try to veer away from others. Okay, so that's a denomination. So they're just like, well, we will allow these, but we won't allow those. Like you can be fine, and you can come to our church and everything like that. But there's things that we believe that the Bible says and the Bible doesn't, and that's these theologies, not these theologies. And it's like, well, what about what the Bible says? So there's a theology which is just like with the Calvinism, Arminianism, Molinism. Jesusism is its own special brand of crazy. But Calvinism is rooted in the teachings of John Calvin. Arminianism is rooted in the teachings of I believe it's Arminius. And there's Thomism, which is rooted in the teachings of Thomas Aquinas. Okay. Then you get Jesusism, which is Molinism, which is rooted in the teachings of a guy named Molina. But then Jesusism is its own brand of crazy, which is rooted in only following what Jesus said. Mm. And when I say only following what Jesus said, it's only following the things that you like that Jesus said. Mm. So it's like, I'm going to follow the Jesus that I perceive from the Bible.
Well, what if it isn't that, though? I mean, what if there's a person who... what if there's a sect of people who that's their theology and they don't personalize it to that degree? They try to practice everything that Jesus said.
If you're trying to practice everything that Jesus said, bravo. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are going to call themselves Jesusists, because a lot of people think that what's wrong with being a Jesusist? Like, are all Christians Jesusists? No, we're not, because it's his own special thing, and it's not as prevalent as the big isms or anything like that. But it's still a thing where they cherry pick what Jesus said, and they're like, well, Jesus, said these really nice things in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 7, but I don't like these other things that he said, or they just haven't read the other stuff he said. They just read these few chapters, and they're just like, well, that sums up Jesus. And it's just like, well, if you only pick out the nice things that Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, then you're conveniently ignoring all the other things that you really don't like that you didn't realize Jesus said.
Yeah.
So it's Jesusism is cherry picking Jesus. That's all it is.
Well, that's what I mean. It's that's a way to perceive the way that people are likely to do it. But I mean, there's got to be, hypothetically or theoretically, got to be a possible way for somebody to memorize every word that the Bible claims that Jesus said and try to practice them totally. So I would say, I guess what I'm saying is the cherry picking nature of it must not be what disqualifies it from a real worthwhile tradition necessarily.
Have you heard Jesus is love?
Jesus is love? Yeah. I have heard that, yes.
Have you heard people say, and if Jesus is love, then that's who we need to be. We need to be love.
Yes.
Okay. So the Bible teaches that Jesus is the Son of God.
Sort of.
Would you say that the Bible teaches that Jesus is the Son of God? Not that you believe it, but would you? No. Okay. All right. So generally speaking, this is most Christians can agree on this part, that Jesus is the Son of God. Okay.
Sorry.
I don't expect you to.
I know.
I'm just generally speaking about Christians.
I know.
Most Christians will say that Jesus is the Son of God. Okay. So then you take that a little bit further. Most Christians will say that not only Jesus is the Son of God, but he's also the second person of the Trinity, which is a 3-person makeup of one God. Okay? Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm not expecting you to agree with me on all this. We don't have to go into all this, but I'm making a point. Okay. So if Jesus is love, but he's also God, okay, just drawing the lines, okay, then he's not only love. Jesus is also just. Jesus is also merciful. Jesus is also gracious. Jesus is also all these other attributes. So when somebody says Jesus is love, yeah, the Bible says God is love. Okay, that's great. But he's not only love.
Right.
But everything he does is rooted in love. But just because you practice justice doesn't mean you love someone less. So it's like a judge can judge somebody as a human being and pass a punishment, okay, in a court of law. That doesn't mean he thinks of them any less. That doesn't mean that he can't love that person, but there are consequences for actions. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that jump on the Jesus is love train in the Jesusism world, they like to say, well, Jesus wouldn't send anybody to hell because he's love. And it's like, that's one thing that whether intentionally or not, And this may make me sound like a prick, I don't know. But some people are offended by that word. But Jesus does everything in love, and he is love, but that does not change the fact that there are consequences for actions. And so,
yes, I mean, I think we're a little off. I think we're seeing the subject slightly differently, because I think what I'm trying to say is I agree with that. I agree with the fact that plenty of people, and I don't think it's just, I'm taking that one example of theology and kind of like taking it, abstracting it as our way to take apart maybe theology in general. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know why I'm focused on that one, but the
'cause
point,
it's Jesus.
I don't know if it is that. Maybe
Jesus.
it is, but the point is, any other theology could also have people in it that like cherry pick things in that same way. That habit on people's part of cherry picking things that suit the way they see things isn't exclusive to one particular type of theology. So all I'm saying is it can't be used, that the way that it's used by people can't disqualify it as a legitimate theology as it compares to others, because like there's people who are Calvinists or people who are any of the other assorted ones that I don't know what they are, but the ones that you listed off that I'm sure do the same exact thing, so it doesn't speak to the theology so much as it does the person.
Right. And that's not necessarily, that's also not necessarily to say that I've got it all figured out.
Right.
Because if you worship God, if you study the Bible, if you study God, then you practice theology. Theology is just the study of God. When you adopt a theology, then you're adopting a certain set of beliefs in a study of God. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay. So Calvinism is a certain set of things that John Calvin and a few others throughout, since the Reformation have said, okay, these are what we believe God is and what God isn't. And there's still room to debate, but more or less this is what we believe God is and God isn't. And we derive this from Scripture. Arminianism, same thing. Molinism, same thing. They all have their things. And so and this is where the black sheep thing comes in, because if you meet a lot of people like me and a lot of people that I associate with, we don't have a chosen theology because we find that there's issues with all of them. And holding to it's like you're and I don't know how much you've discussed this on your podcast already, but it's like your issues with ideologies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you see Christianity as an ideology of itself, which there's room for debate on that. But I think that your issues with ideologies within Christianity can be more targeted toward the isms in Christianity than necessarily Christianity as it is as a whole, okay? Because the isms are far more stringent and rigid in their thinking, and saying, well, if you're not part of this, you're not an ist.
Yeah.
You're not part of an ism, and it's like, well, I'm not going to get everything right, but I'm not going to go to one sect and say this is completely 100% right. So I'm going to jump on this, and then anybody else who believes differently is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's pros and cons to all of them, but I'd much rather not align myself with one of them because of the implications, and this is it goes back to the alien question, the implications of what it says about God's character. And so if the logical conclusion of your ism, of your theology, says something bad about God's character, different from what the Bible teaches about God's character, which is where you say that you've derived your theology, then there's a problem. And if Christians believe, and most of the popular isms, they all believe that the Bible is without error, okay? Not necessarily grammatic or missing a letter here or there or whatever like that, but without error in its teachings, okay? If that's true, and you believe something that has a logical conclusion that says something in contradiction of this thing without error, then it's not so much that, then you're wrong, at least in a big aspect of what you believe. And so I'd much rather not be in error as much as possible by ascribing myself to a certain sect of theology, and I just want to get as close as I possibly can to what the Bible actually says. So whenever somebody makes a claim, it's like when me and you have conversations. When you make a claim necessarily about life or the Bible or all these different things, I'm going to be like, okay, so I'm going to take that to its logical conclusion. How does it correspond to reality? Or, depending on what the subject is, if it's about the Bible, how does that correspond to what the Bible says? All these different things. And I don't think that the Bible says anything that's contradictory of reality, because it's... Anyway.
You believe has no flaws?
I believe that it is without error,
Mm-hmm.
principally in its teachings and in the history that it records, all these different things. So, but with all these isms, their logical conclusions, you can always point to something that it says that is in contradiction of what the Bible says about God's character. And I believe that that's a very, very dicey place to be, because then you're relying on man's interpretation of the Bible, not what the Bible actually says.
Well, okay, so let's turn it around a little bit to get away from.
We just got a lot of people.
Oh, it's fine.
I don't know if I'm going to share this online now.
You don't got to.
I'm going to.
I hope you will.
I don't mind making people mad.
Let's twist it around a little to involve like the atheistic perspective. So,
Okay.
So that same problem I think exists and that's the problem that we found each other in or whatever. It's like Christians, I think, would say we take what the Bible says, we interpret it as if it's like it's literally true, the way that it's been translated down to what it is. It represents literal truth. And I think the atheistic tradition as of like the last decade or two has been, all right, we'll do that too, but we're going to do that very seriously. We have no bond. We have nothing. We have no commitment to any theology.
Nothing to lose.
We have no commitment to the idea that God is a nice person or whatever, a nice entity. So we're going to be really brutally honest about what we conclude here. And I mean, I know that you wrestle with these things. I know a lot of Christians probably don't look at this stuff, but like there's a lot of compelling evidence provided by critical atheists that take that same practice of what you're doing, commit themselves to questioning or like commit all of their attention to the question of how authentically true, how historically and literally true is the Bible. And they come to entirely different conclusions, which is obviously where apologetics comes in sometimes. But there's a question there. It's like, I know that you don't hate atheists or like wish that they weren't doing this, but there's a problem there. It's like, there's not one conclusion being reached that we can say, this explains this issue that maybe makes the Bible look like it isn't historically accurate, or it isn't scientifically accurate, or it isn't physically accurate or whatever. So like the question there is, how can the Christian tradition claim to be fixated necessarily on like the truth of these claims rather than the desire for these claims to be true, when there's plenty of instances where there's not really hard arguments to be made against these criticisms that atheists tend to provide.
So are you was it Freud that said that religion is wish fulfillment?
I think that sounds like something he would have said.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a very broad statement. So
yeah.
I mean, okay. So let me say this. Hitchens had a lot of fun things to say.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with his criticisms of some of his criticisms. Excuse me, of organized religion. Did he make sound arguments against Christianity? Not very regularly. He had a personal issue with people that claimed God,
Mm-hmm.
which I have personal issues with people that claim God all the time. So I can completely relate to something like that. And he had issues largely with it's funny. He had a lot of large issues with the Catholic Church.
Oh yeah.
And he had a lot of large issues with, and he never really articulated this very much, but it was mentioned in his book, God is Not Great, with Calvinistic teachings. So a lot of what I found with new atheists, just because, that's the term for them, is that they have issues with claims made about the Bible that are specific to groups of people like Catholics or Calvinists or Arminians and everything like that. And then they have, then they understand an interpretation of the Bible from those people that misses the mark. And I'm not saying that to discount their issues, but I think that if they would have targeted their arguments to the people that they were speaking to many times, then their claims would have made a lot more sense. Because you're not going to talk to William Lane Craig like Hitchens did and go after him on Catholic doctrine when William Lane Craig is fully Protestant. Like he's not a Catholic.
Sure.
So you're attacking his Catholicism, but he's not a Catholic. It's like a girl the other day attacked Matt Walsh as an evangelical Christian, but Matt Walsh is a Catholic. So you need to make sure that your arguments are pointed in the right direction at the right people.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found with a lot of those things, and you can be more specific with the claims that you're speaking about, and I want you to, but that's where I think a lot of the issues and a lot of the conversations fell apart.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of attacking things that the people on the other side, in the other chair, didn't believe.
Yes, I see that in some of those cases.
In some of those cases, yeah.
In particular, in his like more American tours where he was talking to Protestants,
Yeah.
it was like he would talk about Islam and Catholicism a lot, and that was, I think, for him,
And rabbinic culture in New York City, which was
Sure. And I
so
think
bad.
I think for him it was more like he was putting his perspective out there and whatever. And it's like, I don't know. It's fine. It's just I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But so let's get more specific.
Okay.
Just take the book of Genesis. Take your pick of gospels, but particularly like the later written ones where Jesus like comes back to life and stuff. And if you want to take like Revelation or something, you can do that. You could just take those 3 books. You could take where we come from, who Jesus was, and, well, where we come from, where we're headed, but also not just who Jesus. Yes, the whole thing about whether Jesus was God or a God, whether he died and came back to life, and also whether he, like whether these alleged eyewitness accounts of his life are actually that. You can pick where we start, but any of that stuff, I think, is what I'm talking about when it comes to the new atheistic tendency to take those 3 books as a case study and say, let's separate all this stuff from the mythology that we've been raised to believe it through, and let's ask the question: how old is the Earth? Did evolution happen? Did these authors of these books actually see Jesus? Is there any reason to think that Revelation, like the apocalypse, is going to unfold this way? That's the problem that's the way that atheists have been trying to participate in the conversation on the same playing field, asking the same questions, but without the assumptions of affirmation.
So I think this is turning into my show. This is what we talk about on my show. No. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about any of those, and some of those are in my wheelhouse, some of them aren't. So if you want to be specific, because I know that there's specific claims that were made by the new atheists within those 3 books that I can't just answer willy-nilly. So I just need to.
So pick between a gospel or a Genesis.
But I don't know the question. Like, what
I
is
know.
the
I mean,
question?
I'm saying the question will come with whichever one you pick.
Let's just go with Genesis.
Okay.
I just finished studying that a few weeks ago.
Cool. So let's take Genesis.
Okay.
Christians, again, the question is, Christians claim to believe in biblical truth, like what's true about the Bible, because the assumption is that what's true about the Bible is true about reality, as you laid out. So atheists have been taking on the same challenge. What's true about Genesis? Is it true that the earth is this is the starting point of history for the earth, and that it's only this amount of time old? Is it true that Adam and Eve were the first people? Is it true that Noah's Ark took place at all? All these things. I guess the question I'm putting forward to you is, when we're talking about truth, how are we going to assume that looking at truth through what I would call bias, the belief that the Bible needs to be true, like the outcome of the conclusion you need to reach is that God exists and that the Bible is true? How is it working with that assumption more honest intellectually than like the atheistic desire to say these things aren't consistent with what we know on a scientific level about the world?
Okay. So I still haven't heard a specific question. So are you asking me to explain how I believe like a statement is true, like and a specific statement in Genesis is true, or are you asking me to explain how Genesis, like all the evidence that I believe points to like every single event, basically within the first couple hundred years of Genesis, is true? Because those are different questions.
I think what I'm trying to do is, and you're right, I'm not asking the question very pointedly. What I'm trying to do is
I'm not calling you out. I think this is great. This is helping me.
Yeah. What I'm trying to do is like reveal what I think of as an inconsistency or like something false about this whole problem that you and I have been in for so long.
So point at one specific thing you think is false.
All right. Let's just start from the beginning.
Okay.
Creation. If your approach to creation is, I'll make a truth claim instead of a question.
Okay.
If your approach to creation, to the question of whether the creation story is true or not, if your approach is, my conclusion needs to be consistent with like what I have been taught is biblically correct, I think that is biased and not as likely to produce a true conclusion so much as it is a theological conclusion. Whereas I think the atheistic skepticism approach of saying, I'm going to trust the idea that science has produced worthwhile knowledge by way of the theory of evolution and also dating the world. I'm gonna choose to believe those are more well-founded than the literal interpretation of the Christian creation story. That's what I think is more likely to be true. I'm saying this as myself. That's what I think is more likely to produce something true than it is to maintain like allegiance to the theological ladder that's like created out of all these things. Am I wrong about that?
Okay, so are you asking if Genesis 1... I'm not avoiding the question. I'm trying to completely... Because this is the problem that you have with me in some of our conversations, to where I'll say things and then you'll be like, okay, let's bring it in. Okay, are you asking how I can believe Genesis 1 and 2 are true? Or are you asking what I believe about Genesis 1 and 2 are true as far as the creation account goes? And is that based on my assumption, how I was raised? Or is that like based in like, and why does that differ than what science? Can we at least agree that scientists say things, not science?
Well, science isn't a personality, I agree.
Okay, yeah, okay, cool.
But you'd have to say that about the Bible too, I guess.
Well, the Bible actually says things though, like.
Well, yeah, I guess. It's semantic because like there's scientific papers.
Well, there's the scientific process, which is what most people are talking about in their scientific papers. Yes, but scientists are the one. You're right.
Yes, we can say that.
I'm really still not avoiding the question because I know that a lot of people are like, "Why don't you just answer the question?" I'm still trying to figure out exactly what...
Do you think you understand the question?
I'm still trying to figure out exactly what your question is.
It's about bias.
Okay.
It's about the Christian
So it's
bias.
not about creation, it's about the Christian bias.
That's why I offered multiple
Okay.
different examples
All right.
of like,
Yeah.
you could pick any of these books. The bias is still going to be there. And the bias is, I believe things that support the conclusion that I have, which
Okay.
is that the Bible is true.
Right.
Whereas people who don't have the faith, and you can call them atheist or agnostic or people of a different faith, non-believers of this particular belief,
Yeah.
they are saying there are arguments that exist that cause a problem in believing this. And so I think, knowing you as a truth seeker, I'm trying to understand how you can express believing that you're pursuing truth, but also like being determined to come to one particular conclusion without that whole skeptical side in there.
Okay. So you're asking how I can figure out truth. And so as it relates to creation, the Bible claims this thing happened. And then I have to piece together, is that true? What part of it is true? How do I interpret this correctly? How does it correspond to reality? All these different things.
We're getting there. Yeah.
Okay, we're so close.
We're so close.
Good thing we have plenty of time.
Last thing I'll say, and then just take the reins.
Yeah.
The question, I think, as we talk, it becomes more clear. I see a difference in what you would call biblical truth versus actual truth, and I think some biblical truths are not supported by the evidence.
Gotcha.
That's what it's all about, and it's like the question is for Alan, like, are you aware? Do you agree that what's more important to you is like biblical truth that helps sustain your belief rather than potentially actual truth?
Right. Okay. So you make a distinction between truth and biblical truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that biblical truth is yet another truth. Like truth is the umbrella for everything that's true. It sounds redundant. You don't, define a word with, variation of its word, but, right. So truth. So we're on the same page. And so we got to define the terms here.
Okay.
Truth is that which corresponds to reality.
I think that's functional for what we're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I don't want to, because if we're speaking specifically of biblical truth, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's a different part of the same conversation.
Yes, and we both know there are other definitions of truth that we could work it, like we could think about.
There's different isms.
In this case, what we're talking about, yes, is like what is consistent with reality.
What is consistent with reality? Okay, cool. All right. So, do you have a problem with specifically the 6 days that Genesis talks about? And I say days like this. Do you have a problem with the 6 days that Genesis talks about? Or do you have a problem with the, in the beginning, for Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So because we can either have a problem with the creation story as it is, or God being the one that created.
Sure. I don't think I care because, again, by using this same issue would exist among 3 different books. So it's not, I don't personally have an issue with anything. I won't say that. I'm sure that in any issue that we can get specific with, we could battle that out. The question is what produces the truth.
Okay. All right. I don't think anything produces the truth. And either that's me misunderstanding your question or me answering the question.
What approach to the issue can lead you to the truth?
Well, there's a claim made, and you have to test it to see if it's true, to see if it corresponds to reality.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have to look for a few things. One, it has to correspond to reality.
Okay.
All right, but then there's other things that a claim has to. There's other truth tests that it has to pass in order to be functional as truth, to be acceptable. Not necessarily believable, because a lot of people don't believe truths. Like, I was a liar for a really long time, and a lot of people believed what I said, but that didn't make anything that I said true. It was, a lot of what I said was a lie. So there's just tests that these things have to go through. So first you want to look at logical consistency. Then you want to look at empirical adequacy, and then you want to look at experiential relevance.
Experiential relevance. I don't think I understand that one.
Okay. So experiential relevance, how does it apply to the human condition, basically?
All humans?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does it apply to the human condition?
Yeah. Experiential relevance is what the claim is the claim being made. Does that have anything to say about the human condition, like objectively?
Okay, so that is part of assessing the truth about something for you.
Yeah. And then ultimately, does it actually correspond with reality? Because something can be logical, but that doesn't mean that it's true or real. Something that can be empirical, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily true or real, because like there can be a story in a book like Paralandra, and it's true within the pages of that book.
Right.
Okay? And there's evidence within that story to support itself.
See, that's what I mean about like understanding that there are different ideas of what truth is that we can mess with. And I'm down with that. That's the part where I would probably agree with you the most about all the stuff where we actually overlap. But like I said, what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is taking the literal approaches that I think more fundamentalists or more like traditional Christians take, and the fact that so many atheists have now, over the atheists that we're familiar with, they took that same script. They said, we'll play the literal game. We'll interpret the whole Bible literally. And that's where the problems, I think, have seemed to reveal themselves, because it's like the application of the book of Genesis is one thing that you and I could probably have a lot of common ground about. Yeah. It's the literal belief. It's the belief that literally the way that it's described is the way that it has unfolded. That's specifically, I think, about the correspondence with reality. And by reality, we mean historicity. We mean the past, what has already taken place. The question is, are you more likely to reach the right conclusion by approaching that question about the literal truth of it with the conclusion already embedded into the problem that the answer has to produce a belief in God, and it has to continue a trust in the belief in God, versus approaching it with skepticism, approaching it with trying to disprove it, basically?
Yeah. Well, I think that going through those truth tests, the logical consistency, the empirical adequacy, the experiential relevance, and then does it correspond to reality? Mm-hmm. I think that going through those, everybody has bias. Whatever. Everybody knows this. We all have a bias. But if you're honestly seeking the truth, like you pointed out that I'm trying to do, and I believe that you're trying to do, I think I have a more structured way of doing it than you do, and that's not a hit on you. That's just that's just the conversations we've had. I think that really trying to figure out, is something true? I think that's the kicker, because a lot of people are like, well, the Bible says it's true, so therefore it's true. And well, why do you believe that? Because I have faith. Well, it's okay. Well, you don't understand a few things. The Bible isn't true just because it says it's true.
Right.
Just like my name's Alan, but that's not because I just said my name is Alan. It's just like you can say certain things about yourself that are not true, but suddenly you said them and now they're true. That's not how that works. Same thing that you can dive into with you can apply these same tests to biological claims, and you can still come to the truth of the matter. Now, with everything, with every claim, you can pass all these tests. There is still an element of, okay, there is no way I can have all of the answers to all of the questions. But can I get to a certain point in these tests, in my beliefs, in putting together all the evidence, to where the most logical conclusion that I can come up with is that this is true? you have to come to a certain point. Once you have everything, come to a certain point, and there has to be a leap. That's why it's called a leap of faith, but not in the disparaging way that's just like, I think Hitchens at certain points is just like, oh, of course you had a leap of faith, and put back the greasy hair. It's great. But there's just like somehow leap of faith is disparaging. Well, a scientist is not going to have every single little thing that he needs to make a objective conclusion about a certain thing. We're never going to know every little thing, but we can get enough information to make a correct conclusion. We can be wrong on itty-bitty pieces, not have all the facts, but we can still find truth.
Well, I'm not trying to take away anything from anything you've just said, because I'm fine with a lot of it. Two things. One, I never find it useful to compare the way that people have faith to the scientific method as if there's anything in common between the two.
Well, that's what I was trying to point out, is that faith is misunderstood.
Yeah. Which I'm fine with that. And I think that the second part is, what I notice is, I think the skepticism side of it is this like innocent until proven guilty kind of attitude. It's like the burden of proof is on Christians, like you have to, we're not believing this until you provide sufficient evidence, that's like literal hardcore evidence. Now that we know what science is, you must prove it scientifically, which is just unnecessary to
mildly redundant.
Yeah. But I notice with people who have a faith, it's sort of like it is this process of being like, we're trying to entertain what's possibly true. This is a phrase that a friend of mine uses a lot, like what's possibly true. And it's like testing if it's possibly true, almost like using it as a lifestyle or something. And then if it works, then you do that. And I'm not trying to simplify faith down to like exactly what I just said, but I think
relativism. That's not truth seeking.
Yes,
if it
but
works,
I mean,
do it. That's not.
Yes, true, but like, God, that does make it a lot harder for us to continue the conversation, because like it.
Welcome to me and Tyler's conversations, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I mean,
it's a real show now.
Surely, I mean, I know that the way that you see the world, that complicates it quite a lot that you just said that, because like, I know you're not somebody who's trying to eradicate all other faiths from the world, and you're somebody who's struggling with this on a more hands-on way, where you're actually coming to conclusions, and you're really deeply involved in it. For a lot of people, though, I think it is sort of relative. It is sort of like you live a functional model within society for what like a good life is.
And then that's just pragmatism.
Yeah, that's pretty much pragmatism for a lot of people, and I think. Say what you will, but I mean, I think that's what faith is for a lot of people, is just like kind of hedging your bets on the thing that seems to produce a good life for you.
And I feel sorry for those people.
Well, then, I mean, that reveals something. It's like, what is beyond that? Because you were talking about faith, you're talking about kind of acting on faith, but then what is the opposite of it? Then why do you feel sorry for those people? Do you feel like you have more of a literal certainty about it?
I don't feel sorry for people in that way. I feel sorry for people that they go through faith. I mean, they go through life pragmatically.
Why?
It's just like, if it's just functional, what is the point?
I don't think it. I mean, it's really hard to have a functional life for a lot of people.
No, I'm saying, but if you're saying, okay, well, this works, so this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
What's the point? Just because it works.
Think about
because what's the meaning behind it? Like, if it works, that's fine. Do it. I have no problem with things working, and so doing them. That's fine. That's literally what jobs are.
Yeah.
Like, I have a job. I'm going to do it. It pays the bills. You gotta work to earn money to put food on the table. Pragmatic. Okay.
But what I mean, the issue is, it's not just work. It's like, it might be prosper.
Okay.
It might be survive. So you could take either of those words, either prosper or survive, which I think pragmatism in its way.
Well, survival of the fittest is completely pragmatic.
Sure. But I mean, I think we have, I've been playing with an idea that we have like two part of the whole dynamic between like a binary kind of way of understanding balance in the world. Two of these forces that are involved is like prosperity and survival. And I would say that pragmatism results in prosperity and survival. It results in like a balance between those two things usually. So when you think of something like an alcoholic, alcoholism works in a lot of ways because it like numbs your pain or something. It might like take you away from the things that you don't want to be a part of. It might work according to some metrics.
And that's good. You put the quotations on it.
Right.
Work is that's well. See that then it just goes back to the relativism thing.
Right. Oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So it works according to some metrics, but the metrics might be off, and they might not be using those two words I offered: survival or prosperity.
Because alcoholism works for people that aren't dead yet.
Yeah. So what I'm saying again is, I think a different way to understand pragmatism is not just that, because you could argue that if an addict uses some kind of justification to say alcoholism works, I'm still alive right now, aren't I? If it's not producing life and it's not producing prosperity, I would argue that it's not pragmatic. And so it might be the case that pragmatism doesn't just produce sustainability in the current situation, but prosperity and survival for the future. So in that way, I would say there's nothing to feel sad about with pragmatism, unless you feel like something I've said is kind of off the mark.
Well, it's funny that you say off the mark, because sin is missing the mark.
Right.
But I don't think it's necessarily wrong to want to prosper or survive.
Right.
My question is, if that's your goal, then what's the point? To prosper and survive?
Yeah, kind of.
Why?
That's what we're in. That's what it means to be alive, as far as I can tell.
Okay. So to prosper and survive.
Yeah, I mean I think like I said, I think that's two of the deepest forces in us. I think like you had mentioned JP's book, like I think prosperity is connected to chaos, is connected to liberalism, is connected to femininity. And I think that survival is connected to order, is connected to conservatism, is connected to masculinity, and so on. Like I think that's the binary thing that is supposed to be in balance. That's what I've been talking about.
So that's where you would find yourself.
That is what I'm saying is like a description of when you say like, what is all this for or whatever, with those two words, that's what I'm talking about, is like these forces in the world that we have no choice by being alive, but to maybe figure out in our lives our own personal and our social balance with these forces, in our lives. So when you ask what pragmatism is for, that's what I'm saying. I think of pragmatism as almost like it's how you survive life. It's how you like live life for a while before you can't anymore.
Gotcha. Earthly speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody that believes the Bible is really worried about prospering or surviving.
You don't think so?
Not really.
Why you say that?
Because if you're working to prosper and if you're working to survive, goes back to my question a few minutes ago. Why? Why are you trying to prosper? Why are you trying to survive? What is the point of prosperity and survival? It's to prosper and survive.
What's
Okay.
the opposite?
Well, I mean, meaning. There's no meaning in merely prospering and merely surviving. It's just merely prospering and merely surviving.
Meaning isn't the opposite of prosperity and survival.
I think it definitely would be, because there's no point to either of those things without it. So there's no foundation for either of those things. So where do you derive meaning in your, like, not, I mean, generally speaking, I'm not saying that you hold that, but I'm saying if somebody is just trying to prosper and survive, why? What's the point? What are you trying to accomplish? Just prosperity and survival? Okay, well, that's great. It's functional. It keeps money in your bank account, relatively speaking, and it keeps, your blood flowing. But why do you want to prosper and survive just to have money in your bank account and just to keep your blood flowing? Like, there has to be a point to both of those things. Or else there's no point in prospering, there's no point in having a bank account, and there's no point in keeping your blood flowing.
Again, I still say the opposite. I would think of a more accurate way of
and not maybe it's not the opposite. Maybe
conceptualizing the opposite of. Think about but it's relevant though, because if you think about the opposite of prosperity and survival, the opposite is death and suffering. So, like, is it not meaningful to try to avoid death and suffering? Would you choose death and suffering?
Well, if there's only prosperity and survival, then what's wrong with death and suffering?
Would you choose death and suffering?
Well, no.
That's all the reason you need to prefer survival and prosperity. But I have reasons
for it. So why wouldn't you choose death and suffering? Because you'd rather prosper and survive.
Yeah,
why?
That's
because you don't want to die and suffer.
Yeah, I don't understand what's complicated about that.
That's what a circle looks like. You're answering the first question with the second, and so on.
Why do you eat?
Because I like food, and I'm hungry sometimes, and
yeah. So that would create the same circle. It doesn't mean anything to say that there's a circle.
Yeah, but I do not correlate those to the basic function of life. Like, I need food to survive.
Mm-hmm.
I need food to live. Those are things that I need, but I don't need prosperity, and I don't need necessarily to fight for survival. The other option is death and suffering, and no, I wouldn't like that, but...
No, you do need to not die if you're going to be alive.
Right.
Same way,
But that's what I'm saying.
You said you need to eat, but you don't need to eat if you just are happy to die.
Right.
And it's the same thing.
But what's wrong with dying if the only other option is survival?
I'm not saying there's necessarily something wrong with dying.
Well, I'm saying that survival and death, they can't be just it. You see what I'm saying? Okay.
I don't understand why this is a problem. It makes no sense to me.
Because there has to be some meaning behind.
No, you're saying that there has to be meaning, but like a lot of people feel like they don't have meaning in their life.
Okay.
Meaning is not a necessity. So like that kind of throws out the problem.
Why do you want to survive? So you don't die. Why do you? Okay,
I'm all for meaning, by the way.
Right, yeah. But okay, so let's say I want to die. Right? Let's say I want to die. My wife is pregnant with her first kid. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, before that, I'm married, obviously, but I couldn't find a reason to live. I was just like, I just want to die. So I was just nihilistic and everything. There's no point, even though I'm married, even though my wife loves me, I'm trying to love her, but really, I don't have anything to live for. But then, let's say I'm the prime breadwinner in my family, and my wife can take care of herself, but then my wife gets pregnant, then she can't go to work, hypothetically speaking, okay? Then there's another life. So my wife by herself could take care of herself. But then taking care of another person suddenly adds meaning to my life that can't take care of themselves. It's not just me. It's not just a purely functional thing. Like I can see, and I'm not, again, knocking on you, just illustration. You up here, cabin, by yourself, prosperity and survival works for one person.
I don't.
It doesn't work for the human race. That philosophy is untenable for the human race.
What philosophy? What do you mean?
Purely pragmatic lifestyle is not untenable for the human race.
Man, I gotta disagree, because it's not that meaning has to be apart from it. Like meaning might very well be a part of prosperity. So I'm not excluding meaning from the whole painting, but again, for the way I understand pragmatism is pretty cool. It's pretty
not
functional.
To speak too highly of pragmatism, but it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
It works, right?
Think about I'm trying to think of examples where I couldn't use this perspective to inform it. And again, if you think of, I don't know, like some homeless person who's like strung out and who's still alive, it's like, you don't say, I assume you
Well,
don't.
they're definitely not prospering.
No, that's what I mean. Like in
They're
our
barely
minds,
surviving.
that's what I mean. In our minds, we wouldn't be like, man, if they should really like give up on the surviving part and
Right.
just accept that they're not prospering, so just stop surviving. I think usually when we see those people, we are frustrated because we're like, man, get out and prosper. Like try to find prosperity and like man, I wish for the best for you. But
And you may be using prosperity interchangeably with meaning.
I think it includes a lot of things, and like I said, I think meaning can be in there. But like,
I just think
even making enough money to like enjoy parts of your life, I think, which that might in fact be attached to meaning, like having enough security to have some leisure in life, I think is a part of it.
Yeah, I just have the reason I feel sad for people that just want to prosper and survive is because what does prosperity look like? Well, it's different for every person. What does survival look like? Well, using your example of a strung out drug addict, it looks different for every person. Like you're barely hanging on isn't necessarily survival. It just
Well, I mean, I
means
said that in my argument too.
Yeah.
Like,
so
that's a behavior that's eventually going to kill you.
right.
So I wouldn't call that surviving.
But prosperity doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be any better at survival. So it just I feel sad for people that don't have a reason for either of those things other than that's just what works and that's what they need to do. That's why I feel sad, because I'm just like, well, don't you want more out of life? Don't you want a reason to be prosperous? Don't you want a reason to survive other than just yourself? Because if it's just purely one person thinking about their own prosperity and survival, again, survival of the fittest, like I said, is purely pragmatic, okay? If that's the only reason you're doing it, well, that's great for you. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's any meaning to your life other than prosperity and survival. And that's why I feel sad for those people. I don't think any less of them. I just wish that they'd find a purpose for their life. Because if somebody's super prosperous, like let's say Jeff Bezos, okay? He's super prosperous, right? What's he doing with his life? Is that it? He's one of the richest men in the world? Is that it? Let's say he wants to go to the moon or Mars or wherever he wants to go with his peanut-shaped rocket, okay? That's fine. Why? Just for the advancement of humanity. Okay, that's great. That's great. You're there's a purpose behind what you're doing. But if he's just earning money just to prosper as an individual or just to survive as an individual, then then that's selfishness. That's self-aggrandizement, if you will. Okay? And what I'm saying is meaning like, what's the point if you're only living for yourself?
I guess I just don't see the problem the way you do in terms of like pragmatism being necessarily focused on yourself, because part of prosperity might be a lot of selflessness. I don't know, but
that's why the prosperity gospel sucks.
Well, this started with us talking about other faiths, and I said, there are people of other faiths, and you talked about relativity. There are people of other faiths who also believe that, like, their faith, which is different than yours, it might be a Muslim or a Jewish person or whoever. They might believe, like, they might use the same confident language that you would to describe your faith and their relationship with it, but it also might be the case that from an outsider perspective, accepting this thing into their life is functional in their life. It like helps them pursue. I honestly think that Christianity helps pursue, especially the way that it's been modernized to be understood now, helps pursue a long life and prosperity. Like and that includes charity. That includes like giving to the poor and stuff like that. I would put that all under the umbrella of what it means to have a prosperous life, one that you do well enough that you can give to other people, but also that you live, that you don't like just stay drunk all the time and like, do things that are super dangerous or unhealthy or whatever. I think that pragmatism is underneath all that stuff. And so I guess I just don't understand the maybe default assumption you might have that like if we describe maybe our relationships with religion as pragmatic, that it's like lacking the meaningful part of the selfless part.
Right. Well, then, like I said, that's why prosperity gospel sucks.
What is prosperity gospel?
Prosperity gospel is, in its worst form is give money to the ministry and God will bless you. So if you send money, I'll send you a prayer napkin, and that way I can afford my private jet. Now God's happy because more people are going to be able to hear exactly what I just told you. That's prosperity gospel. They're saying whatever you do for this ministry or for God is going to benefit you tenfold.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's a problem with that. But then there's also a problem with social gospel, which is just a different version of that, which is do good for all these people and it will benefit you. Okay? Gospel means good news. So all you're saying is the social good news, the prosperous good news, all these different things. But it's just like, do good for your neighbor and you'll be all right. Do good for this ministry and you'll be all right. Do good for God and you'll be all right. This is what the teachings are. Surface level, it's like, okay, yeah, but there's literally no difference between those three things and karma. And that's why I don't think that karma makes any sense, because then you're just trying to send good things out into the world in hopes that you'll get good things back. And if you do something wrong, well then crap, you're going to get bad things back. But that's what made My Name is Earl such a funny show, okay? Which is, one of the funniest comedies ever. But it's like, it's the law of attraction to some extent. It's manifestation to some extent. It's like, okay, so all these different things, if you're just doing those things so that way you're better, then ultimately you're only doing things that are beneficial to you under the guise of doing beneficial things for other people. And that is how do I say this? Not even delicately. That's an abomination of the golden rule.
I wonder if...
Now, we can move on to the other religions and stuff like that, but this just what you said just brought it back.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, it made me wonder if, like, the whole idea of doing things to glorify God or goodness itself or whatever is like how that came about, to try to actually practice, like, what's it called? Altruism?
Altruism, yeah.
I don't know.
Well, but then from the Christian perspective, that's called pietism. Okay, and it's another ism.
Yeah.
Pietism is, okay, well, it's either the Pharisees or the Sadducees. I can't remember, but if you read through the New Testament, you'll find a bunch of mentions of both, right? I can't remember which one it was. I should, me being the guy that has the Apologetics Podcast. But one of them, one of the groups would keep their heads down. I think it was the Pharisees, but I know my buddy Wes is going to correct me if he hears this. I think it was the Pharisees. They would walk around town, and in order to not lust after any women, okay, they would keep their heads down. They would literally walk around like this, okay? So do you have audio on this or is it just video?
What you mean?
Like
an audio version?
Yeah.
Yes, I do have an audio.
So for the audio listeners, I'm just putting my head down. And so think about it like I'm just walking down the street, not looking at where I'm going, just only looking at my feet. That's what these people would do, okay? And they were considered some of the most religious people. They were considered some of the most learned people of Judaism, okay? These were like the rock stars of Judaism, okay? Along with the Sadducees. But these are just a different, again, ism, right? But they would walk around just staring at their feet in order not to be tempted or lust after any women, period. So they walk around and they would run into things. They were known for running into things.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, it was a badge of honor if their head was bleeding.
Hmm.
And they're like, I'm doing this for God. It's like, crap, you aren't, man. Like, no, you're not. You want people to see that you have blood on your head so they can see how religious you are. That has nothing to do with God, except for the fact that you want people to idolize you. So then it's just idolatry, which is what Jordan Peterson calls ideologies. He just calls them idols. That's just then idolatry, and it's not about God, even though the claim is, I'm doing this for God. That's just pietism. It's just being as pious as following every jot and tittle of the law or whatever you think the rules are to the nth degree, so God will be happy with you. But at the end of the day, you're only trying to meet a standard that you'll never be able to meet, but you want people to look at you and go, yeah, he's really doing it. He's really doing it. And that's the problem that therein lies in with a lot of the monasteries and everything like that. The monks that go away to just be as pious as possible within their chosen thing. They're just trying to be pious. And they say, this is for God. Well, God didn't ask you to do everything perfectly. He asked you to do it for them, go out and make disciples. So if you're locking yourself away, and then you throw money at the problem, which, not all of them do, but if you're locking yourself away and only and doing this one thing just for the sake of doing that thing, then it's defeating the purpose. It's pragmatic, but it's pointless. It serves a purpose, but it really has none, ultimately.
I think the only failure is, I do agree with the way that the analogy you chose. I understand what you mean,
and Hitchens would have agreed with me too.
Yeah, I get it.
He had a lot of the same problems.
Yeah, I get it. I understand what you mean.
Which is really, I don't agree with every atheist. I just want to remind people of that.
But I think again, it's the assumption that it just sounds like you're committed to the idea that the meaning that you understand in life is lacking in other places. And I think that's probably a wrong assumption, because I think a lot of other people find a different kind of meaning in a lot of this stuff. In some people, I don't understand what some people do with their religious beliefs and why they do it, but I do know that rituals and stuff. I mean, even Christian rituals, other people who aren't a part of that could look into it, or even us as modern people could look at some from the past and be like, well, that's what you just did with Judaism. But,
I can point at Christianity too. I wasn't picking on the Jews.
Yeah.
I would never pick on the Jews.
Right. But you can look at different religious traditions, and sure, it's easy for us to say there's no reason for it, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't some sort of meaning that they derive from it, from their culture, from their whatever, So I just feel like we're fixated on something between the two of us that's a question of whether pragmatism consists of meaning, and I don't agree with the position that pragmatism excludes meaning. There can be it's are you
pure
saying
pragmatism has no meaning?
You're
can
saying
can
pure,
we agree that pure pragmatism has no meaning?
No, I can't agree with that.
Okay, so if it's purely functional, then the entire purpose is for it to function.
Function isn't without meaning.
That's what I'm saying.
So what do you define as meaning?
The ultimate purpose of the thing for the how can I say this?
I understand. I think I don't want to interrupt your thought.
No. Yeah.
I understand. I think what you mean about if something's purely mechanical, that it's mechanical. So if I've got a Blu-ray player and it plays Blu-rays, and that's just a function, and I get that it in its existence is just a function.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Pure pragmatism is. That's what I'm saying is pure. That's why I'm giving you an out here with pure pragmatism. Because if you only follow pragmatism purely, then there's no meaning. It's just whatever works. That's what I'm saying. Whatever works, that's it. So if it works, if it works for me, meaning is why you do something.
So that's how you define meaning.
Why you do something. Yeah. And it's not necessarily something that you choose. It could be something that is chosen for you, depending on your belief system, or it could be something that just is. Okay? So let's say God for real created humanity, going back to the creation story. Okay? We have meaning because God created us. Meaning is an amalgam of value and purpose.
Hold on, now you're on a different definition.
Right, but
you said meaning is why you do something.
Right.
Now you're saying what?
Now it's amalgam of value and purpose. I'm saying for Christianity, if you believe Christianity is true, meaning is derived from your creator.
Okay.
But I'm saying if meaning is not derived from a meaning giver, then it's just why you do something.
So that's what it sounds like. That's why you take this issue with pragmatism, because you're working with the assumption that meaning is provided by a creator and that it can't be derived otherwise.
You call it an assumption. I call it just what it is.
So, but am I right about that? That like you're saying it's part of your belief in God that you're saying that meaning has to come from a creator rather than just being like it can't be a part of our natural condition to seek meaning.
I'm saying because God exists, that's necessarily the case. I'm not saying because I believe it, that's the way it is. I'm saying because God exists, that's the case.
Yeah, I guess that's why I had yet to...
That's the conclusion that we always come to, is that, okay, now it makes sense because it's just like, I believe in God and you don't.
Yeah, but I mean, like, there's no reason to say that like, there's no... It sounds like a bit of a need to exclude pragmatism from, say, whatever your philosophy about life is, because like I don't see any reason to say that like pragmatism can't consist of meaning.
But I'm taking it to its logical conclusion. That's
I don't think I'm not, though.
Right, but are you following the logic of just doing what works to its logical conclusion?
Well, again, I was trying to deal with the word works, and I was saying I don't agree with you that like the logical conclusion of pragmatism is to produce the conclusion that, or that I don't agree with the logic, what is claimed to be the logical conclusion that pragmatism results in pure function only, void of meaning. I don't agree with that.
Okay, so define pragmatism.
I did that like
I know. I just want to hear it one more time.
Like I said, I think I think there are...
I hope somebody's enjoying this.
I think there's a binary of kind of like dominant forces in the world.
Okay.
I think pragmatism is one word for how we have tried to argue that there's a balance to be struck between these two things. So just as basically as I can say it, I think pragmatism is a way of existing that produces both life and prosperity. That's what I believe. And I don't believe that prosperity excludes meaning. Nor do I think life excludes meaning. I think meaning can be a part of pragmatism without any effort for me to like justify that claim.
So you don't think that you would have to impose meaning in like you would have to infuse meaning into pragmatism? It necessarily exists.
I mean, me personally, I find it a lot more meaningful to be alive than to be dead. And I find it a lot more meaningful to like imagine a life where I'm prosperous and happy and doing well than I do to imagine my worst case scenario. So yeah, that doesn't even require any effort from me.
Well, from my perspective as a friend of yours, your life is going to have meaning even after you die. If I'm still here and you die, your life is still going to have meaning in mine.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So are you saying that means that if meaning exists, if somehow meaning in my life can exist separate from my life continuing, that means meaning is necessarily not a part of pragmatism as defined by me? Okay, I disagree.
Right. Well, because survival and prosperity, death and suffering. You said these are two sides of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just saying, your life has meaning, and your death has meaning, but even after your death, your life will have meaning.
So why does that mean that meaning is separate from the idea that I've put forward about pragmatism being a good functional way to live, and that like that those two things are apart, that pragmatism is separate from the meaning that might be derived during my life?
I put meaning into your definition of pragmatism.
How do you mean?
Well, I said even if you die, your life has meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I literally put meaning into your definition of pragmatism.
I mean, I'm saying
because it wasn't there. It wasn't outlined. I'm saying if it's purely functional, that's fine. Whether we agree on it's pure function or not, that's fine for you to think and for you to believe. That's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that there is meaning to your life outside of what you think is just prosperity and survival. So I'm saying it's not just for you. And that, I think, is what I'm saying is rooted more in what I believe than what you believe. Because for your life to have meaning even after your death, for your life to have meaning, according to your understanding, you have to be alive for it. And I'm saying for your life to have meaning, according to what I believe, you have it whether you're alive or dead. Now, you have to have lived in order to have meaning, but even after you're gone, you still have meaning. Your existence meant something. And it wasn't just whether you prospered and survived. It was because you're a human being.
Well, it depends on what you mean by meaning, because you've given like two different definitions.
Well, I'm going by my definition, which is an amalgam of value and
value and
purpose. I believe that you have value and purpose, whether you continue living or whether you die. I believe that you as a person had value and purpose, and you still have value and purpose in my life even after you're gone.
How can I have purpose in your life if I wasn't alive?
There's still things that I'm going to remember about our conversations and about you as a person that are going to teach me things. Well,
that's cool, but that knowledge that you have in your life still depends on what was cultivated in my time while I was alive, and that's could be also a part of the prosperity that
I'm
might
actually
have been in my
trying to
life.
Help your pragmatism out. That's actually what I'm trying to do.
That's not what I'm saying.
I know, but I'm trying. You say that meaning can be in pragmatism, and that's I'm like, okay, fine. I'm helping you put it in there, but the problem is that in order for it to be in there has to be some meaning given to the life to begin with. There just has to be, or else you're
What do you mean there just has to be?
No, I'm saying there has to be, or else you're prospering and surviving, or you're dead and suffering. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So the value and the purpose in prosperity and survival, or death and suffering. Okay, if it's just like that, okay, it can be the sum of whatever. Okay, if it's just like that, then there has to be some given meaning to any of that, or else it's just what it is. And I'm saying that's great. I'm trying to give you something from my worldview to help yours out, because you can't define meaning in yours.
Why can't I? I don't.
Because you've tried. You said it's there, but you haven't actually given any evidence of it. So I'm trying to help you out, buddy.
I don't think you are.
I actually am.
I mean, I don't think you're like.
You can change the word. I'm being very sincere, actually, because
I don't think you're being mean or anything.
Yeah, and I'm not being condescending.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say, okay, here's some building blocks. Change the words of them. Change a few words, semantics, whatever, so it doesn't sound so Christian.
Well, that's the thing, though. It's
it.
like it feels as though there's peace. I get that. I believe that you think you're trying to help me out, but I think that you are also. It's like,
and I'm not necessarily just talking to you. I'm talking to them too.
I know, but it's your worldview that's like trying to be in your it seems to me like you're trying to say this part of my worldview would improve it, but that's still like limited to the way that you see it through your perspective.
Give me another way.
My perspective doesn't require that.
All right. Well, give me another way that you can have meaning in prosperity, survival, death, and suffering without what I've just said.
All right. Like I said, no, I didn't say this, but
no, you I was getting ready to say. I was just like,
yeah. I didn't. We hinted on this, but
okay.
You could take. Sam Harris tried to do this.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
I want to talk directly to one of my sisters. I don't practice with you for Tyler. This is our conversations. Like this is the way it is.
This is what we do. We've been doing this for years.
I know. This is, what was it, like 5 years now?
I think so.
It's crazy. And yeah. So you are not practice. You are lightweight. Okay. You are a sparring match compared to this.
So, Sam Harris tried to do this at in the UK. There were. And I don't know that I definitely can't, but I think what we're trying to do is Sam Harris speaks on this pretty well is what I'm trying to say. All I'm saying is to me, it is not surprising that our default as a species is more likely to be suffering and a short life. And that's what we've been trying to defeat for a really long time.
To use Sam Harris, though, we also have to give context because he's a complete determinist.
Yeah, sure, if you want.
So there's no meaning in determinism.
Yeah, Sam Harris, I don't see things how he does in a lot of ways, but I think he does a good job of talking about the problem of suffering and making the case that it's just simply self-evident to notice that what we are trying to do is escape suffering and also have a better, longer life if possible. And that's all I'm saying too, is it is self-evident that it's better to not suffer than it is to suffer. And to me, if you take that further, it's self-evidently better, or we prefer it more, generally speaking, to prosper in our lives than we do to have a miserable time. I hate the idea of dying, and I want to live as long as I possibly can. And I don't want to not be here, So
I like you being here too.
I like me being here too. I like you being here. So these things, that to me is a glimpse at meaning itself. But you can take those things and turn them up to an 11. You can, when we talk about prosperity, like I've said already, it's one thing to just say, I want my day to be better than yesterday was. But it's a whole nother thing to create a life where your day is so good that you have enough money, you have enough time, you have enough energy to invest in other people's well-being as well and actually feel like you're making the world a better place. I think that's a part of prosperity, and that is also what we point to a lot of the time to tell people, if you want to look for meaning in your life, help other people. If you want to look for meaning in your life, have a good family relationship situation going on. Those things are meaning. I think those things are also a part of prosperity, and I think in a lot of ways also a part of staying alive. So that is my case. That's all I'm saying about meaning. It's not that I don't think what I'm putting forward even excludes the idea that there's an afterlife or that there's a God or anything like that. All it is simply is just the belief that what we can imagine as the best life we can live, and pursuing that is meaningful and functional, and that's not complicated to me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool.
I'm just going to repeat myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't think that what I've just put out expresses any space for meaning within pragmatism? You don't think that there's meaning there?
I don't think there's a point in helping people if
what?
If you're just if you're prospering and surviving, then what's the point of helping people so they can prosper and survive? Why do they? But why do they need to prosper and survive?
Isn't that what Christians say that you're supposed to do?
Yeah, and
help people?
I've explained the value that each person has and the purpose that each person has as a created human being. That God created every human being. They are infused with value and purpose. They are infused with meaning. So inherently, nothing that they do or don't do changes their meaning. They have value and they have purpose. It has no bearing on their prosperity or their survival. That's why in Psalm 139, when it talks about how God forms a baby in a mother's womb, right? God is talking directly to us and saying, hey, you have value even here. Even here, while I'm piecing you together, you have value. You have a purpose, and I love you, and I'm taking the time with you. Okay? That has nothing to do with how they could die. As soon as they hit fresh air, before they hit fresh air, somebody could, a matter of convenience, just, whatever. We don't even have to get into that. But the point is that their value and purpose, their meaning is directly from conception.
So when you say meaning, you mean, well, you already said that actually. You said pretty much that you're not talking about when people say, I want to have a meaningful life. Mm-hmm. That's a totally different thing than what you're talking about.
Their life already has meaning.
Well, you're talking, no, because what you're saying is meaning is decided by the entity that created you. So when you say meaning, it's like saying, I made a broom for the purpose of sweeping. And you're saying God makes people for the purpose of something, as opposed to the idea that, it could also be the case that if there's a God that created people, he could have created a situation where he said, I don't give you meaning. You just live a life that you pursue meaning through.
He could have, but there's no evidence for that.
Well, there's no evidence for the alternative either.
My alternative?
Yeah.
Well, that's what the Bible is.
Okay. I think we're going to have to leave it to the audience to decide where they land, and I hope that they choose wisely.
But then it just goes back to like what the Bible says, and if the Bible is true. That's what I'm saying. Sure. And so that was the original starting point for where we got to now.
Yeah.
If it's true, then that's what the Bible says.
It's biblically true.
Exactly. Biblically true. Okay. But if it's just true in general, okay, if the claims in the Bible are true, if Psalm 139, where God is speaking, okay, through the writer, if that is true, that he took the time with us in the womb, in every single thing, then if that's true, then it's true, whether I believe it or not, or whether I say it is or not. If it's true, it's true. And so if people have meaning, they have value and purpose, and it's true, then that's true. I don't believe that it can be derived from anything that we do. We can do things that are meaningful, like you said, with the broom, okay? But I think that we have to have a standard of meaning in order to continue meaning.
And that's where it often comes down with us is you insist, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but you tend to insist that there has to be a certain standard for certain things, and I don't think I can see that anymore, but I'm open to continuing to argue about it.
Right. Even JP says that the Bible is more than true.
Exactly. And that I get. And that's why I don't take it literally, because like more than true is a whole different conversation.
More than true is just more than true. Okay, so Jesus in the New Testament says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Okay? So he is the truth, right? That's I'm not saying do you agree? I'm saying is that what the Bible says?
We do have to be specific because
okay. That's what I'm asking. I know that you don't. Okay. Do you agree that that's what Jesus says that's what Jesus purportedly says in the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Goodness gracious. You see what I have to do? Okay. All right. And yet we still get together. But no, so if the Bible is more than true, then how do we follow that? You see what I mean?
That specific claim.
Jesus says, I am the truth. Okay? He's the truth incarnate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So he is more than true because he is what is. That's, again,
I'm
the
with you. I'm
biblical.
with you.
Okay,
I'm not.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's what is meant by more than true. Okay. The more than true, the Christian belief system is that the Bible is the Word of God.
Right.
Okay. Not God. Okay. Because that's biblicism. All right. Another ism. Okay. That they believe that that the Bible is not separate from God. It is just another piece of God. But it is the Word of God. It was inspired into men to write through their pen or quill or
Right.
whatever. Okay? That's the Word of God. So the epitome of is, okay, now we're going to really be getting into philosophical territory, close to Thomism, but still not. Isness, if you will, all right, informs everything underneath it. Something has to exist for other things to exist. A necessary existence, or let me put it this way, an independent existence has to exist for dependent existence.
I understand the words, but I don't understand how they apply to this or why they're.
But that's what I'm saying is the more than true thing. So there has to be a standard. There has to be a standard for time. Again, I'm just going to use another illustration. We have time because a timeless something.
Yeah, see, no, I don't. That's not how I understand the more than true thing at all. I understand it a totally different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it. Since we're here.
Yeah. I don't. It's not. I don't think of it as like a standard that. It's often the other way. Like with you and I, it's often we just flip where the source comes from. For me, that place that Jesus allegedly holds in that spot above this other pattern is the other way around. It's humanity that over time we could look at the patterns of our behavior and abstract it into a simplified lesson, such as like, don't murder. Don't murder is something that with all of this, all these patterns, all this information, all these stories that whirl into these
Thank
life lessons.
Thank you for translating that part of Exodus correctly.
What, don't murder?
Yeah.
Don't do murder?
Yeah, thou shalt not murder.
Yeah. Whirling into all these stories of human experiences, whirling into this abstract, but also boiled down lesson that is, don't murder. That's don't murder is the idea of what's more than true, because it's in my understanding of it, it's a conclusion derived from all these experiences that can be applied to like all of these stories as where they all went wrong, and the thing that if we learn it, it can be applied to a lot of situations. That's what I think that's the best I can do right now about how to put it into words.
Yeah. And where I'm sitting is that there just has to be a foundation that's beyond us.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because because if we have a roof without a roofer, then it's just like roof all the way down.
Roof all the way down.
It's
I
just
like
roof
that.
all the way down. So it's like, you got to come to a point where it's just like, okay, well, but if we have us from the bottom, then it's got to be us all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
And where is up? Like, what is up? Like, there has to be some level, or else it's just a Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then it's just us just going up and up and up as far as we possibly can, and then then we're just Tom Cruise sitting on top of the Burj Khalifa. I mean, it's just like, where do you go from here?
Yeah.
So it's just, great, I did this. What next? So then it's just us all the way up. So if it's just roof all the way down, and if it's us all the way up, what are we standing on? And why do we have a roof? And again, it goes back to the question of why. That's why I keep on asking why. Not to irritate you and not to annoy the people that are listening. Okay? I just have to keep on asking why. Like, why are we at the bottom going all the way up, and why is there even a roof?
So, I mean, I like the way you're describing that.
I got to give credit to James Sire because he told a story about elephant all the way down.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Like, what is the universe built on? And it's just built on this, and then it's just get to a point where it just you got it, and it's like elephant. Okay, well, what's beyond it? Well, it's elephant all the way down, honey.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I mean, I appreciate that, but I guess I just don't understand, like, there's a bit of a poetic, I think, a poetic liberty that kind of, like, provides you with that I don't even, like, I can't even plug that into necessarily where we were with the whole thing and with my idea of what's
well, you're just saying it
more than true.
It's just like people. And then we just keep on, and I'm just going, okay, well, if that's it, then it's just people all the way down, and where's down and where's up.
But how come it can't be people, and then that idea of don't murder? Why can't that be a roof?
Why can't the not murder be a roof?
Yeah.
Well, then you still have to ask why.
That's fine, but I mean, I'm saying that whole whirlwind of people underneath is my why, and then the roof is the conclusion.
Why do you need a roof? That's what I'm asking to your thing. Why do you need a roof?
I think I'm thinking of it.
Why does murder have to be it?
I don't think it's the only it. I mean, I'm saying there's lots of roofs, and I'm saying, like, when we are fortunate enough to have enough years to discover truths that we think are, like, more than true, that's what a roof is. In the way that you gave it, that's what I'm thinking of it like.
Yeah. And I'm just saying there's a fundamental aspect and there's a transcendent aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fundamental aspect, it is just there, and it doesn't move. It's the foundation. And there's a transcendent thing that doesn't move, and it is just there. And you can't go beyond either of those things, and both of those things are the same thing. And so it can be us from foundation up, which falls apart fairly quickly because, humanity, we're not going to agree on all the things that are going to get us to the top. We just can't. That's just human nature. And if it's just roof all the way down, okay, which is two separate things, why do we have a roof, and what's the point of having a roof on the bottom? I mean, it's the space between them that I don't understand, because I don't understand why the foundation can't produce the roof. I don't, and it sounds the foundation, in broken analogies. Okay.
Sure.
I mean, we all have our limits. Me and you. I'm not saying you. Me and you. But truth, as I learned it, as I understood it from Webster's Dictionary years ago, before it was changed along with a bunch of other definitions in the Webster's Dictionary that was changed. I remember when society was much simpler. In the 90s. Wasn't that a great time? No. But as I understood it, truth is a fundamental and or transcendent statement or observation about reality.
When you build a house,
you have to have a foundation.
Yeah, you don't start with the roof.
No, you have to have a foundation.
Yeah.
But in order for it to be a house, you have to have a roof.
And I'm cool with the roof. Yeah. All I'm saying is, like, I don't understand the idea that, like, without
if it's just walls, everything in between, it's not a house.
No, but what I'm saying is I don't understand the assumption that there must have been a roof first, and then all the humanity underneath it that learned from that roof. We're using roof again in this weird poetic.
I'm just using both.
Yeah. It's a strange thing, but we're talking about, when we say roof, we're talking about the transcendent, kind of abstracted idea. And you believe that the transcendent idea came first because it was the very first thing.
I believe that they both came first, the fundamental and the transcendent.
You believe that God predates humanity, though.
Well, yeah, I don't believe God has a date.
Yeah, but predates.
Yes.
Existed before.
I believe that God dated humanity, yeah.
Yeah. So you believe that the transcendent truths existed before we existed, and that as soon as we came into existence, that we were subject to that, not like we were subject to that law, and we had to try to learn it.
Well, this actually Saki's right back to, where we were at the very beginning as far as curiosity goes. Okay? So there has to be a structure in place for certain things to operate as well as they possibly can. And I'm saying that when people get involved, we tend to destroy more things than we do build them.
We've built everything, though.
And we've just about destroyed everything.
I mean, don't get me wrong. We destroy lots of stuff, but like everything that works.
I'd say it's about a 50-50 thing.
Well, I mean, everything that works, we've also built. So it's like...
And everything that doesn't, we've also built.
Also, time does that, and water, and wind, and like humans too. But
right, yeah, I mean, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about sentient things.
That's. I need to ask you that. What are we talking about? Are you talking about?
I'm fully following what's going on here.
I'm following it mostly, but what are you talking about as far as what we create versus what we destroy and stuff?
So whether it's our ideologies, philosophies, religions, homes, businesses, buildings.
So you are talking about some physical things as well.
I'm talking about just about everything that a human can dream up is inherently flawed and self-destructive.
Okay.
That's because we're inherently flawed and self-destructive.
Okay. So you're saying...
So I'm saying if it's only us,
mm-hmm.
Okay, if it's only us figuring these things out, then it's going to be inherently flawed and self-destructive.
But surely you don't think that everything we make, while if you might work with the assumption that it's inherently flawed and self-destructive, but it also aspires to something, and like we have the desire for it to persevere,
for it to mean something,
or I mean just for it to exist. Like when you say self-destructive, I don't know what you mean, because when we build a building, yes, it's going to deteriorate over the time. That doesn't mean it's like self-destructive. It's just things deteriorate over time.
Right. It was self-destructive. Like there's nothing that's permanent that we make.
Something not being permanent, I don't think is the same as being self-destructive.
Okay, so if we're inherently flawed and self-destructive, okay, then everything that we create is going to be inherently flawed.
That's what I'm saying. I don't agree with the terminology.
Well, we can't. Okay,
I'm American.
Right.
Is everything I make American?
Well, that's not the argument.
Okay, I'm hungry. Is everything I make hungry?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I make a guitar, it's hungry.
I think it's the law of analogy. Everything that is necessarily creates something like itself.
I'm specifically worried about the term self-destructive, because like humans, while I don't even know where you necessarily come up with that. It's like,
are you self-destructive?
I can be, but I can also not be.
Okay, but are you?
I can be, but I can also not be, and that's the problem. It's like you're kind of qualifying it as one thing more than another. Am I selfish?
Yes.
I can be, but I can also not be.
Right, but at the end of the day, like I'm not saying do you identify as I'm selfish 100% of the time?
Well, that's what it sounds like when you say it that way.
I'm saying we can't get away from our selfish tendencies, our tendencies to destroy things, whether by accident or intentional. It's a subconscious thing to want to look out for ourselves primarily, even at the cost of other things. And so it's necessarily self-destructive.
I'm sorry, man. I'm really trying to follow, but self-destructive and selfishness, that doesn't work at all for me, because like
it's the same thing.
No, because if you're trying to self-preserve, that can be selfish. Like I could hoard all the food for myself, and that could be really selfish, and maybe that would make people not like me, but that's not the same thing as being self-destructive.
Well, how is that benefiting you if you're hoarding everything and everybody else is suffering?
Well, then I would be like having all the food, having all the resources.
Yeah, but then you're alone.
It feels a little like you have to see the flaw in what has been laid out. You have to see what I'm saying.
No, you're you're inherently self-destructive and inherently flawed.
And
And if you're hoarding all the food, then you're going to be hurting yourself because you're going to be lonely because either people want to kill you to take food so that way they can live, or they just don't want to be around you because you're a jerk and selfish.
I acknowledge that.
So you're destroying yourself by trying to preserve yourself at the cost of all relationships.
Okay, so you're using specifically the metric of relationships now.
I'm saying the metric of everything. We can't make anything perfect. We can't make anything permanent.
Okay, I think I understand what you're trying to get at. So you're saying that even if you think that your attempt to claim all the resources for yourself, like say food, even
You
if
can even use the World Trade Centers as an analogy here.
Well, don't hold on. If you're just tell me if I'm right or not. You're saying that even if you think I have the perfect idea,
okay,
I'll keep all the food for myself, and
okay,
then I won't be hungry, and that's selfish. But like that's what you're doing. But it still can't be considered perfect because it's at the expense of those relationships. So therefore, it can't. Like you're saying that there's no perfection.
You're still ultimately hurting yourself.
Okay, so you're saying because there's no perfection, you're for some reason using that to say that people are all self-destructive.
I just now used the word perfect. Otherwise, I've been using inherently flawed and self-destructive.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So now you're jumping on the perfection thing. I'm saying that if you hoard all the food, then you're ultimately going to be hurting yourself because you're lonely. And because you can't. Okay, let's just use another example. Like I said, the World Trade Centers. Okay.
Okay.
The World Trade Center is going to be self-destructive to a certain extent. Okay, it's too tall, and they had to put in precautions, like it being able to move in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
All right, because it was so freaking tall. All right, so it's inherently self-destructive that they had to put in things to keep it from destroying itself or the wind doing it. Because if there's just even the slightest bit of like the bird lands the right way or ultimately it can just fall in on itself. So you have to build it a certain way, you have to engineer it a certain way, but then you have to put in sway bars basically. Okay, I know that's not the technical term, but it's inherently flawed. So that's why you had to put in safety precautions or whatever. But then it's self-destructive because the materials that you're using to make it deteriorate naturally. They just do.
I just don't agree with that use of the term self-destructive because that's not what it is. That's not colloquially what that term means. Deterioration is not the same thing as self-destructive.
Colloquially is irrelevant. The self-destructive means the same thing anywhere.
No, I disagree. And colloquially, I can't even say that word, but how people use words is a huge part of how we define them.
Right, but I'm using self-destructive, and it's pretty universal.
That's what I'm saying. I disagree.
Well, okay.
I don't know why we're still stuck on this, but like something that deteriorates over time is not the same thing as something that intentionally destroys itself.
I just think we speed up the process because we're selfish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think selfishness is inherently self-destructive.
That's fine.
Yeah.
If you say that, that's fine. But the analogy is
how is selfishness not inherently self-destructive?
It's also self-preserving. That's the thing.
Right. Self-preserving of one person who wants to take care of only themselves for their own well-being,
but that's
forgetting everybody else. So how is that not self-destructive? You're alone. You're hurting yourself by screwing everybody out.
It's just weird that you're like adding all of this context to it after you offer the premise, because it's like, is selfishness self-destructive? It doesn't sound like it, because selfishness also can be used to give yourself things that you need. But then you say, well, here's examples of the secondary cost of all that. And I agree with the secondary cost of all that. I agree that anything to that level
of excess. But that's the cost of selfishness.
But like selfishness also produces something else, and you're being very rigid about saying like all of these examples I'm given, they produce one single thing. But selfishness also produces, given the example that we gave, it could produce a wealth of resources
for one person.
And right. That in itself, that in itself on its own, if you're the only person in the world and you take all of the resources for yourself, then it's not selfish anymore. Then you just have all the resources. It's not that it's not selfish anymore, but that second part that you're providing that is at the exclusion of all other humans, that part isn't there anymore. So like the very act of giving yourself things that you just want to indulge in having,
if you take everything, then everybody dies, and then so there's.
I think you're being a little unwilling to see the flaw in your statements, if I'm being honest.
Okay, all right. So if this is on YouTube, right, in the comments,
okay,
I want to know how many people think that selfishness is a bad thing.
I will also add this. I'll add
purely
the question.
A bad thing.
I'll add the question to Instagram as well.
I don't even need a vote. Like if it's true, it's true. If it's not, it's not.
But that's not what you said though.
Is selfishness a bad thing?
No, that's not the question.
That's what I just asked.
That you can ask that, and you're welcome to answer that. The question is selfishness? Does it produce purely self-destruction? Is it self-destructive in its nature?
Is selfishness self-destructive? Is that the question?
That's what I've been struggling with.
Put it in the reviews on the podcast, put it on Instagram in the comments, put it on YouTube in the comments. Is selfishness self-destructive?
Okay. All right. That's what we'll do.
Yeah. So if
I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Is looking out, it doesn't matter what the vote is. It is looking out for numero uno inherently a bad thing? Because self-destructiveness, is that a bad thing? Can we agree that self-destructiveness is a bad thing?
You can't wiggle like that, though.
I'm not wiggling. I'm asking you if self-destructiveness is a bad thing.
Self-destructiveness, yes, is a bad thing.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that you can just say, since it's a bad thing, we can change the question to, is selfishness a bad thing? Because
I didn't say selfishness is a bad thing.
I know. I'm just saying.
Because if selfishness is self-destructive, then selfishness is a bad thing. Ik pay atenlay A plus B equals C.
A plus B equals C?
Yeah.
Okay.
A plus B equals C.
Okay.
If selfishness is self-destructive and self-destructive is a bad thing, then selfishness is a bad thing. It's called a syllogism.
That's fine. That's fine. I think
let the commenters decide.
I want the commenters to remember that my position was, it is too simple to assume, like when you say that, does selfishness produce self-destructiveness? That is not. I'm not saying that it doesn't. I'm saying that selfishness doesn't only produce one thing. Selfishness also produces things like self-preservation. And that's all I've been trying to say.
Still selfish.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm just saying I think it's too narrow to look at it as something that only produces one thing when there's like an assortment of things it can produce given a different situation.
I didn't say it produced more than one thing. I said it was self-destructive.
Does it produce more than one thing though?
I just said it was self-destructive.
Is it also self-preserving?
It's literally the definition of selfish.
Yeah. So is selfishness,
right,
in addition to being self-destructive, is it also self-preserving?
That's literally the definition, Tyler.
So do you mean yes?
No. Selfishness is self-preservation. That's literally the definition. It's not does it produce it? It is that.
Okay. Is self-preservation good?
No.
Okay. And that's where we will land. Do you want to elaborate on that at all before we wrap it up?
Sure. Self-preservation. Self-preservation is inherently about yourself. Self-help is inherently about yourself. Destructiveness is apparently about yourself. And if you're only worried about yourself, then you're selfish. That's literally the definition.
Okay.
So, self-preservation, yeah, I think that is a bad thing. I think that if you're only focused on yourself, then yes, that's a bad thing. On the preservation of yourself, yes, that's a bad thing.
I'm going to stop nitpicking. I think we've gone pretty damn long.
Have we?
We've almost gone 3 hours.
That's
and
awesome.
So this will be my longest one so far.
Yes.
So I'm going to leave it here, not because I want people to know about our relationship. This is what we do all the time, and this level of, I think, sharpness that we've reached with each other is commonplace for us, and it doesn't affect our relationship in any kind of negative way. It's just what we love to do.
I'm still gonna kiss you on the mouth.
Yeah. Yep, it's happened before.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't.
You gotta be careful what you say.
No, it hasn't.
No, we've never kissed. But anyway, I enjoyed this conversation. I really, just as a preview for the future, I really wanted us to talk about the devil. And also, like, I wish we could have got more into the Gospels. And so I hope that we will reserve the option to, like, do this some more and get into some of that stuff. And, yeah, thank you for coming.
I'm never coming back.
I hope you will.
I'm never coming back.
Yeah.
I can't do it anymore, Tyler.
Damn. Well, it was fun while it lasted.
It was great. 5 years down the drain. It's terrible. But no, I'm very happy that you invited me, and I plan on having you on my show. And it'll. I think this has been fruitful. Otherwise, because a lot of people worry about, and I know that you want to cut it off, but a lot of people worry about whether Christians and atheists can be friends.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a big conversation we had near the very beginning, because a lot of people started asking me that.
Yeah.
Because I think I started posting online that every Christian needs an atheist friend. And I believe that with some caveats, obviously, for both sides. Because I've told you that I'm praying for you before, and that's not something that you prefer to hear and everything like that. So there's language and there's things that, about the relationship that have to necessarily be strained.
Yeah.
For people that believe two opposing things. But if this is evident of anything, and it might just be a singular thing, which I know it's not, but there's, if this is evident of anything, is that even if you can't agree, and even if you don't get the desired outcome, or if there is a desired outcome out of the other person, then there's other people listening. And like I mentioned at the very beginning of this thing, other people have overheard our conversations.
Yeah.
Other people have heard things that I've said that would have been offensive, like very offensive, without context of actually like listening to our conversation. So I think that, like any good debate, me and you understand that one of us is an immovable object and one of us is an unstoppable force. And so I'd like to think it's not going to be always like that, and I like to hope it's not. But, I'm still going to love you. But I'm hoping that people listening and people watching are just seeing two dudes that really love each other and come together on these things in the middle of the woods in the country. And in daylight, which is when I like to come out here because it's, it's scary.
Yeah.
But, we're out here in a cabin in the woods and having these conversations, and I think that they're super fruitful, and I'm glad that you're doing this. I think this is really good for you because it gets you in contact with people, which is very important.
Yeah.
You need to be talking with people.
You're not wrong.
But I'm really honored that to call you my friend and that you call me your friend. But it's fruitful whether either of us budge. Somebody's listening that needs to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, I just think conversations like this, that's why you and I started talking to each other in the first place, because I think we do value conversations like this.
Well, you wanted to peacefully disagree.
I did. That was my original statement.
And I just wanted to make you a Christian.
Yeah.
I just like, Tyler Nail wants to talk to me? That's so cool. Let's do that.
It's been fun. And a lot of the conversations have been just like this one, but I like this part. I like making it more visible, It's exciting. It's kind of fun. Alan also is a writer and has books out and has all kinds of other artistic accomplishments that are worth checking out. So I'd follow up with those as well as the Black Sheep Apologist. Is it Black Sheep Apologetics or Black Sheep Podcast?
Black Sheep Apologetics is the ministry. It's going to be it's the name of the podcast. I'm by necessity the Black Sheep Apologist, and so that's where that falls. But yeah, I've written some books and I've written some articles, and I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm on Getter and Parler and all those beautiful things. Parler and Getter under BS Apologist, which is intentional, and then on LinkedIn under Alan V. Nelson, ALANV Nelson, NELSON, and then on YouTube, just type in Black Sheep Apologetics and you'll find me with another conversation in the playlist that me and Tyler have done before on your Face Paint magazine, which is also very fun. But yeah, shout out to all the people that are curious and have questions and think that maybe they shouldn't have peaceful disagreements like this. do it anyway, man.
Yeah.
Like, just make sure that the people you do it with, you love them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's no love, then there's no point. And I think that either for the subject or the person, if there's no love, then there's no point. I mean, why are you doing it?
Good deal. Well, I like it. Well, I guess that's good for today, man, and we'll do it again. So I guess we'll wrap it up for the day. Thank you.
You're welcome.